Chapter 108. Stealing a kiss didn't happen. Yang Yi wasn't a gentleman, but he cared a lot about Murphy's feelings. What if she got angry? Speaking of which, Cece was watching from the back of the car with her big, sparkling eyes. Even if they could be intimate, it wasn't the right time. Murphy kept her eyes closed. She accepted Yang Yi's disguise in a complicated mood. She heard her daughter's screams from time to time, which made her feel uneasy and curious. Okay, take a look at the mirror. Yang Yi's magnetic voice sounded in her ears. Then Yang Yi gently pressed her shoulders to help her sit up and let go. Murphy quickly opened her eyes and took out the mirror she used to touch up her makeup. She wanted to see what Yang Yi had done to her. It's not Mom, she said weakly. If she hadn't seen it from the beginning to the end, it would have been difficult for Shi to digest such a change. But even so, she still doubted her eyes when she saw her mother's current appearance. That's right. Was she still herself in the mirror? Murphy's eyes showed a surprised look. Her eyebrows looked thicker, but that was okay. The main thing was that her eyes had undergone a strange change under Yang Yi's special eyeliner. They looked completely different from before. Of course, she wasn't ugly. Yang Yi's makeup skills were godly. Not only that, Murphy found that the skin on her face and neck had become a little darker, as if she had gone to Africa. The shape of her nose and mouth had also changed slightly under the concealment of the high-gloss powder and eyeshadow. What's this? Murphy touched a black spot under her eye. She thought it was a mark left by Yang Yi's hand by mistake. This is called a beauty mark, Yang Yi chuckled and said. I drew it with eyeliner, eyeshadow, and your eyeliner. Murphy really wanted to kneel down in front of Yang Yi. Not only could a grown man casually name a girl's makeup products, but he could also draw beautiful makeup. If it wasn't for Yang Yi's explanation, she really wanted to knock open Yang Yi's head to see what was inside. Is that all? Shi, can you tell that it's Mom? Murphy turned her head and asked her daughter. She was still a little uncertain. After all, this was no small matter. If his identity was discovered, it would be troublesome. Shi looked at her mom's face with a conflicted expression. She pouted and said, I don't think she looks like Mom. Then she had an idea. She covered her eyes with her hands, then giggled and said, If you can't see, then it's Mom. Murphy breathed a sigh of relief. If her daughter couldn't recognize her, then there shouldn't be a problem, right? But at this moment, Yang Yi thought of something. He asked Murphy to move her head over, and tied up her hair. Yang Yi tied Shi's hair almost every day. He often changed the style, so not only was he familiar with it, but he also had a hairband in his pocket. Murphy's long and curly hair was combed by Yang Yi, leaving only 2 strands of curly hair hanging down on her temples. The rest were gathered above her ears, and tied into a ponytail at the back of her head. The ponytail was buttoned inside, then he braided the ponytail into 3 braids. Then the 3 braids were gently pulled, giving off a fluffy feeling. Finally, Yang Yi gently scratched Murphy's bangs with his fingers, making the original hairstyle look a little like air bangs. Of course, it had not been cut, so it was slightly thick. Look. Yang Yi woke up Murphy, who was blushing and didn't dare to open her eyes. Murphy looked at herself in the mirror again. She didn't dare to recognize herself in the mirror. That youthful hairstyle and pretty rosy face made her look no different from a girl in her early 20s. Murphy couldn't help but hold her cheeks in surprise and joy. She recognized this hairstyle. She said to her mom as if she was showing off a treasure. Mom, let me tell you, Papa used to tie Shi's hair. It's like this hair. Haha, Shi, isn't your father awesome? In just a while he changed your mom. Yang Yi didn't take it seriously. He laughed and teased his daughter. It's not a new mom. She wasn't so gullible. She pouted and said, It's still my mom, but she looks different. She still likes the original mom. It doesn't matter. After we finish watching the concert tonight, your mom can wipe it with makeup remover and return to her original appearance. Yang Yi reached out to rub the little girl's head. My hair is messy. She protested. Murphy looked at Yang Yi playing with his daughter with a complicated expression. In fact, her heart was brimming with happiness, whether it was just now when Yang Yi held her face or now. However, she was a little flustered because Yang Yi had given her too many surprises during this period of time. With such frequent changes, Murphy felt that it was a little too fast, and she was a little flustered because she lacked a sense of security. However, there was no time to think too much. Yang-yi activated Dominant Wolf. They had to hurry to the music hall of Popular People House. Although they were in the same district, after the makeup and hair braiding, time became tight. Outside the music hall, a short line was waiting for the ticket check. Most of the fans had already gone in early. In a corner a little further away, Yang-yi held Shishi in his left hand and waved at Murphy, who was hiding in the shadows with his right hand. "They're here, don't be afraid," Yang-yi said with a smile. I took a look, there aren't any reporters waiting to take pictures. The concert was about to start, so the paparazzi following Chun Ijia wouldn't be waiting at the entrance. They would be waiting at the backstage entrance. Murphy pressed down on the brim of her hat and suppressed her wildly beating heart. She muttered as she walked out. "It's all your fault, you won't even let me wear a mask. If I'm found out, it's all your fault." They successfully stood in the line for the ticket check, and soon there were people lining up behind them. Murphy was so nervous that she stuck close to Yang-yi, their shoulders bumping from time to time. "Hey you." Suddenly, a girl behind them curiously peeked her head over. Murphy was so scared that the blood drained from her face. Fortunately, under the dim light of the street lamps outside, no changes could be seen. But at this time, a big hand reached over and held her cold and soft hand in his hand. The warm feeling left Mo Fei with a little bit of strength to maintain the faint smile on her face. "Oh, nothing, I thought you were a friend of mine." The girl apologized to Murphy in embarrassment. "It turned out to be a misunderstanding." "That's very impolite of you." The girl's companion helped to scold her. "I'm also very embarrassed. When I saw her back just now, I thought she was Sam, but she wasn't. But she is also very beautiful." Mo Fei didn't continue to listen to their whispers. The big stone in her heart was finally put down. But Yang-yi didn't let go of her hand, as if he had forgotten. Murphy hesitated for a moment and didn't struggle. It felt good to hold hands in the crowd like this. Chapter 109. There were no more disturbances during the ticketing process. Yang-yi's makeup for Murphy was indeed very effective. Although Murphy's beauty still attracted a lot of attention, no one recognized her. Passing through the crowd and arriving at the VIP seats near the front, Murphy did not have any suspicions. She had lived a good life since she was young. If Yang-yi did not buy a VIP seat and stood outside to watch, she might find it strange. But now it was quite strange. Murphy sat below the stage and watched Chun Ijie appear. Watching the audience cheering, she could not get rid of the strange feeling in her heart. This should be the first time she went to a concert since her debut, right? The last time should be back when she was less than 10 years old, when she went to see a European and American pop star live with her mother. But that feeling had faded away. She only remembered what it felt like to be on stage. Before Mo Fei retired, she had held 2 concerts in Hongren-Fong's music hall. On the stage, she could sing her own songs and feel the cheers and enthusiasm of her fans. She liked the joy of her music being recognized by people. But now, sitting below the stage, the main character was someone else. It felt strange to cheer for someone else. So many people. She sat in the chair between mom and dad. After a while, she became restless. She turned her body and knelt on the chair. Looking back, she could not help but say when she saw the crowd surrounding her mom. However, the cheers of Chun Ijie's fans had already started. Yang-yi could not hear what she was mumbling. For safety's sake, he pulled the little girl down and sat her down on the chair. The concert had already started. On stage, Chun Ijie opened with an old song. After singing, he said a few words to the audience. "Thank you everyone." Chun Ijie's Mandarin was still a little strange, but he did as the Romans did and tried very hard to speak. "Thank you for coming to support the second stop of my national concert tour." Before he finished, there was a tsunami of applause and cheers from the audience. Many people shouted in unison, "Isan Isan." Many people are curious as to why I chose a beautiful city like Jiangqing as my second stop instead of a big city like Shanghai or Guangzhou. From time to time, Chun Ijie would slip up and say Cantonese, but he would quickly realize it and immediately change back to Mandarin and repeat it with a serious attitude. Yang Yi sat below the stage with a slight smile. He wasn't worried that Chen Yijie would reveal his identity. After confirming that Murphy would be attending the concert with him, he had communicated with Chen Yijie that his identity must not be revealed. That's because I want to thank a songwriter. It was him who helped my new album not only reach the Cantonese platinum album early, but also has the hope of breaking through 10 million sales. Chen Yijie's words caused the audience to cheer again. The city he is in is Jiangcheng. Please shout out his name for me. Muang Muang. The audience below the stage went crazy and started shouting. Muzi, was from Jiang City? When Murphy heard the name, she was surprised. Like many of the audience, she looked at the stage curiously. Was this person going to appear today? Chen Yijie laughed as if he had successfully played a trick. Of course, Mr. Muzi, didn't accept my invitation to sing with me on stage today. I'm sorry to disappoint everyone. It's okay. We're here to see you. A little fangirl below the stage screamed. The people around who heard it were all amused. Mr. Mu Ziong is a very low-key but talented songwriter. He has always asked us not to disclose his information, so I don't know if Mr. Mu Ziong is here. Chen Yijie was obviously lying through his teeth. He even stole a glance at the VIP seats. Yang Yi could feel his gaze. Yang Yi was very grateful for Chen Yijie's cooperation. He wasn't ready to let Murphy know the real situation of his alternate account. After all, this alternate account was quite amazing. It had written so many good songs. Yang Yi was a little too cautious. He had been worried that Murphy would question his identity. But no matter whether he is here or not, I want to say thank you to Mr. Mu Ziong. Chen Yijie bowed sincerely. Of course, he didn't deliberately pick Yang Yi's direction. I dedicate the song Long Time No See to him and to everyone who supports me. The audience cheered. After all, most of the audience spoke Mandarin. This Mandarin song was their favorite. Mo Fei also sat up straight with interest. She had also bought Chen Yijie's platinum album a long time ago. The song Long Time No See, with a touch of sadness, was one of her favorite songs. The soothing piano accompaniment sounded. The audience below the stage quieted down. Only tens of thousands of light sticks were swaying. She was also holding one in her hand. When Yang Yi entered the stage, he saw that she liked it, so he bought one for her to relieve her boredom. I've come to your city. Chen Yijie's magnetic voice sounded. It was as if all the fans were intoxicated. The atmosphere above the music hall was slightly tipsy. Murphy, a singer who purely liked music, couldn't help but praise Chen Yijie's singing in her heart. She closed her beautiful eyes and listened quietly. Yang Yi next to her also liked to listen to this kind of live singing. But he had to take care of the little girl who was moving around. He didn't close his eyes, but he was also very absorbed in listening. When the song ended, the fans in the audience were not satisfied. They shouted again. Better not see. Better not see. Yes, after singing Long Time No See. How could they not sing Better Not See? In the second half of the concert, it was already very late. She had been busy all night, but she still couldn't hold back her sleepiness. She fell asleep in her father's arms. They came to the concert in a hurry. They forgot to bring a small quilt or coat for Shishi. The night air was a little cold. Murphy was worried that her daughter would catch a cold, so she took off her linen cardigan and covered Shishi with it. Sit over here. Yang Yi looked at Murphy's bare shoulders and said softly. Murphy didn't understand. But now that Yang Yi was holding Shishi, it was quite strange that there was an empty seat between them. She moved over and sat in Shishi's original seat. But not long after she sat down, Yang Yi's free left arm went around her from behind. His long arm easily stretched out, and then hugged her fragrant shoulder. Murphy's whole body suddenly stiffened. She turned her head and looked at Yang Yi's resolute face in a daze. Subconsciously, she still resisted such intimate contact. But when she remembered that it was Yang Yi, the resistance in her heart disappeared by more than half. And the big hand wrapped around her smooth shoulder. The rough palm pressed on her delicate skin. The warm feeling made Murphy unable to resist. What should I do? Should I push him away? It's so embarrassing to be seen. No one will notice, right? Everyone is watching the concert. Mo Fei didn't know how much time had passed, and she didn't know how many songs Chen Yijie had sung. But Mo Fei, whose mind was blank, gradually leaned on Yang Yi. It seemed that the hug just now became natural. Chapter 110. Time passed by quickly, and it was now August. Yang Yi's new book, Yuzue, was getting better and better. Although he had yet to go to Guangzhou for training, the character of the protagonist, Yuzue, was already reflected in every little thing. This was a bastard who didn't have the best family background, wasn't the most handsome, and didn't have the best grades. However, he had a cleverness that made people both love and hate him. He had a sense of loyalty that allowed him to easily become the brains of his brothers. This bastard you. In the words of a senior reader's comment, he doesn't look like a future police officer at all, but he's the one that readers look forward to being the most outstanding one in the selection. Of course, Yuzue did not pass the selection. The plot of the story explained that he had returned to his hometown, and the police king, Su Pingqiu, who was worshipped by the students, seemed to want to visit him 3 times. Such a despicable person had grabbed the hearts of the readers tightly. More and more readers flooded in to catch up, wanting to see his final counterattack. Chiyue's back-end data showed that the sales of Yuzue had surpassed Yang Yi's previous 2 books in just over a week after the update. It was also ranked second in the urban section. Looking at this momentum, it was only a matter of time before it overtook the first place. The editors in Chiyue's editorial department exclaimed that this was a phenomenon. If the sales of Yuzue were to be better than those of Soldier Assault and Drawing Sword, that would still be understandable. After all, the number of readers of the city segment had always occupied half of the starting reading market. It was not something a niche military segment could compare to. However, Yuzue's sales could compete with other popular books in the urban section. This was something they never expected. Yuzue did not look like a web novel. Its protagonist was not reborn, did not transmigrate, and did not have any special abilities or other cheat codes. He was just an ordinary civilian. Although he was a little clever, it was obvious that this kind of cleverness could not compete with the mountain that was reality. How could he write a web novel without a cheat code? How could it be easy to make a comeback when it was not a genre? But the data was there, and the sales of the remaining sins were getting higher and higher. Many readers who came to read the book cursed and wanted to abandon it, but in the end, they couldn't help but come back. F***CK, I just want to know what kind of power AB*TCH who can ride on the official car of the returning petitioners can unleash. A book reviewer voiced the thoughts of many new readers. It had to be said that there were people praising and criticizing Yuzue in the book review section. The polarization was similar to that of Soldier's Assault in the past, but those who criticized Yuzue were more like the complaints of Drawing Sword when the supporting characters kept dying. Those readers who were scolding him were, in fact, just trying to catch up. They were not as determined as those who were clamoring to abandon the book. Compared to the one-sided negative reviews in the book review section when the book was first released, it was much better. Obviously, Tai Jr. Com was not willing to continue paying the trolls. They realized that they had been causing a ruckus for a while, but it was only a one-man show. Others ignored them, and it didn't even hurt them. The group of people led by Ling Yin chose to retreat with their tails between their legs. Tai Jr. Com's editorial department could not care less about the remaining sins, which had no conflict of interest with them. What they needed to pay the most attention to now was the sales of the 2 physical books, Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword. According to the previous arrangement, the godly author under their banner, Dan Henskar, would also have a signing event on the first day of August. And the next day, the results for Dan Henskar were out. Driven by the signing event, the sales of the new and old physical copies of Dan Henskar had reached 250,000 copies nationwide. Of course, this result was not good, but under the circumstances where physical sales of online literature were generally not high, 250,000 copies was still an excellent result. For this reason, Tai Jr. Com's editorial department even opened a bottle of champagne and held a small celebration. On the other hand, the opponent's results had to be calculated by the data released by the Copyright Association. The data released by the Copyright Association would generally be delayed by half a day, which was a form of protection for the original channel. Therefore, Ling Yun Extreme did not rest at noon. He kept urging Fishball to refresh the webpage. Is there any news? Fishball looked at the computer screen and was dumbfounded. There is, but Ling Yun Extreme impatiently walked up to take a look, and the string of dazzling numbers left him dumbfounded. 10,000, 10,000. Ling Yun Extreme counted over and over again, refusing to believe it. Could the Copyright Association have made a mistake? Fishball asked weakly. How could the highest single book be more than 5 million copies? The computer showed that Drawing Sword had the highest sales with more than 36 million copies sold on the first day. Soldier's Assault was a little less, but it still had more than 83 million copies sold on the first day. Ling Yun Extreme also felt that it was impossible. He went back to his office, found a phone and dialed it. After a while, he walked in with a gloomy face. I asked a friend of mine in the Copyright Association to check. The numbers are correct, Ling Yun Extreme said sullenly. It can't be right? How is that possible? They're going to be crowned gods. The editorial department exclaimed one after another. Of course, this is not their first day sales. Ling Yun Extreme said unhappily. The military purchased 2 million copies, and the online pre-sales they did before contributed more than 1 million copies of sales. In the end, all of that was included. But after subtracting that, they should still have more than 1 million copies sold on the first day. Fishball, the hothead, really touched the pot that did not boil. That's right. Ling Yun Extreme glared fiercely at Fishball, but suddenly sighed. We've picked an opponent for ourselves that we can't beat. First day sales of more than 1 million copies would make a big deal out of the publishing industry, let alone the online literature industry. Moreover, based on this momentum, it was believed that these two books could squeeze into the top 100 sales list of the year. The Iron Army wanted to compete with such an opponent who was not even on the same level. They were simply overestimating themselves and asking for humiliation. Forget it, withdraw all the publicity and treat it as us admitting defeat. Ling Yun Extreme waved his hand disheartenedly. But there's still a piece of good news. Ling Yun Extreme, as the deputy chief editor, quickly sorted out his emotions. He encouraged, Yang Yi is now writing urban novels, so there's nothing for him to compete with us. So we don't have to worry about him anymore. Not to mention the Iron Army, who had made a big fuss at the beginning but left dejectedly. The focus of almost the entire publishing industry was now on Yang Yi, the rising king of newcomers. Sahara Press also wanted to strike while the iron was hot and push Yang Yi's fame and the sales of his 2 physical books to the peak. However, Yang Yi rejected the signing event. You really don't want to do a signing event? Not even in Jiangqing? Mr. Liu, who was in charge of contacting Yang Yi, could not handle it. Fu Jun personally called Yang Yi to pester him. Don't you know how loud the fans are now? The first day sales exceeded 1 million copies. It's not right if you don't show up to thank the fans. Chapter 111. I don't have time, Brother Fu. Yang Yi understood Fu Jun's difficulties, but he was still reluctant to do so. F***ck, why aren't you free? You're usually running that coffee shop of yours that doesn't have many customers. You don't usually have many customers anyway. It's fine if you close it for a day or two and come out to attend the signing event. Fu Jun complained. Yang Yi twisted the milk bottle and squeezed a little on the back of his hand. He licked it and felt that the temperature was about right before handing it to Shi, who was staring at him. This was his daughter's afternoon tea. Brother Fu, I have to take care of the child. Yang Yi picked up the phone that he had tossed aside and turned off the speaker. He smiled and said, You have to understand the helplessness of a stay-at-home dad. Why can't you even spare a day? Where's my sister-in-law? Fu Jun shouted. By the way, I haven't met your wife yet. When are you going to call her out and have fun in Guangzhou? How about I treat you to a meal? Let's get to know each other. The term sister-in-law was a little inappropriate. Yang Yi did not immediately respond. He paused for a moment before saying, She's busier than I am. She can't leave work. You're someone who earns millions a month and you still want your wife to go to work? Does she earn more than you? Fu Jun was puzzled. Yang Yi scratched his head. He really did not know how much Murphy could earn from commercial performances, but if he counted the savings from her peak, I think so. She's richer than me. Yang Yi said honestly. Fu Jun was speechless. He held it in for a while before saying, I see. No wonder you don't care about money at all. Although Fu Jun did not think that Yang Yi would sleep with a rich woman, he believed that Yang Yi had married a rich second-generation heir as his wife. It could not be helped. Yang Yi was not just an author, he was also his partner. The two of them were now setting up the Sahara online bookstore, and had entered the public's attention with the hot sales of Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword. They had also contributed a lot to the sales of the two books. But there's something I want to tell you. Fu Jun became serious and said, the military received the books that we printed and sent out earlier. They told us that these two works were very well received in the army. Among them, the Jiangnan military region sent out an invitation letter, saying that they want you to go to the army and tell the recruits about the original intention of the creation, and the spirit behind the two stories. Fu Jun sighed and said, I know you don't like these activities, but there's nothing you can do about it. You have to go even if you don't want to. Luckily, it's just the Jiangnan military district, where you guys are. Yang Yi wasn't as conflicted as Fu Jun thought. When he thought about going to the army to give a speech, he suddenly felt an indescribable emotion in his heart. Was it a desire that came from the depths of his memory? Or, in a sense, was it more timid to be close to home? Obviously, as an assassin in his previous life, Yang Yi did not have any special feelings towards the military. However, after fusing with the memories of his predecessor, Yang Yi could not help but occasionally experience the obsession of this body. It was not his original intention to leave the military camp. That place was still his hometown, that he could not return to since he had such an obsession. He might as well go. Although it was not the military camp that he had been in before, Yang Yi felt that it would be better to go there and resolve this obsession. Hey Yang Yi, this army is really not to be messed with. Even if you don't want to give me face, you have to give them face. Fu Jun was still trying to persuade him. Yang Yi smiled and asked directly, when? What? Let me ask you, when do they want me to go to the military camp? Yang Yi asked. I have to arrange for Shishi to be sent to her mother's place. Otherwise, there will be no one to take care of her. We can't bring a child to the military camp, right? Shishi, who was drinking milk, pricked up her ears and turned her head, looking at her father with her big bright eyes. No problem, I will immediately reply to the people in the Jiangnan military region, and make an appointment with them. Fu Jun was overjoyed and hung up the phone. When Shishi saw her father put down the phone, she could not wait to run over. She seemed to have grown taller. Her long legs climbed onto the chair in front of the bar. Where is Papa going to play? Why don't you take Shishi with you? Shishi pouted and asked. Yang Yi did not know why his daughter's ears were so sharp. She even heard that he wanted to go to the military camp alone. No, if Papa is going to a fun place, I will definitely take Shishi with me. Papa is lying. I just heard it. The little girl put down the milk bottle and said, Papa called and said that he was going to send Shishi to Mom's place. Papa is a bad guy. He won't take Shishi to play. As she said, her eyes turned red with grievance. It was as if Papa had done something extremely evil. Yang Yi had no choice but to reach out and hold the little girl. He coaxed, That's not what Papa meant. If you are going to a fun place, why don't you take Shishi with you? Then why don't you take Shishi with you? The little girl felt more and more wronged in her father's arms. She sobbed softly, and a few drops of crystal tears hung on her long eyelashes. Because Papa is going to the army, Yang Yi explained. But the army is not a fun place. There are people there. There is no TV, you can't watch cartoons, you can't wear beautiful dresses, and you can't take your big bear cub. Although he just wanted to scare Shishi, Yang Yi was telling the truth. Shishi did not expect there to be such a terrible place. No TV, no cartoons, no beautiful dresses, and no big bear cub? The grievance in the little girl's eyes disappeared, leaving only surprise and nervousness. Then why is Papa going? Shishi doesn't want Papa to go. The more the little girl thought about it, the more scared she became. She held her father's fingers tightly and shook her head at him. She felt that if her father went, he might not come back, so her big eyes were full of worry. Yang Yi was moved and amused. He reached out and gently touched his daughter's nose. He explained softly, "It doesn't matter. Papa is just going for a day to give a speech to others, and then I can come back." "Then don't lie to Shishi." Shishi pouted and said, "When did Papa lie to you?" Yang Yi shouted that he was wronged. The little girl tilted her head and thought for a while. It seemed that he really did not. But the little girl was still a little worried. She stretched out her right little finger and said, "Papa wants to pinky promise with Shishi." "Okay, pinky promise. Papa promises you that I will come back immediately after the speech. I can't let Shishi worry." Yang Yi smiled and hooked his little finger with her. There was a sharp contrast between his big hand and her little hand. Now the little girl smiled, although her little face was still a little tear-stained. Chapter 112. Brother Yang, you're here to record songs again? In several commercial buildings in the West Pavilion Square at the main entrance of Jiangzhou Media University, there were many recording studios similar to WIN. After all, this was Jiangzhou Media University, where talents came in large numbers. Students and teachers often came to record some demos and songs. If there was demand, there would be a market. This was normal. However, these recording studios were also mixed. The price was cheap, the recording effect was poor, and the equipment was not complete. The WIN recording studio that Yang Yi chose was relatively large, and it was a top-notch recording studio with advanced equipment. Of course, the price was also not cheap. Yang Yi had been here several times before. The boss, Wang Songhai, recognized him and greeted him as soon as he came up. "Brother Wang, I'll rent the original recording studio for a day." Yang Yi nodded to the other party, and then began to take out the money. 1,200 yuan. He counted 12 large bills and handed them over. "Rent for a day? So expensive?" Wang Songhai used to play music, but he didn't play well. He chose to start a business for the sake of living. After getting married and having children, he smoked and drank, causing his voice to sound like that of the vicissitudes of life. He also laughed at himself that he used to sing gentle and lyrical campus folk songs, but now he can only sing rock songs at the top of his voice. The so-called music dream has naturally been given up. Yang Yi smiled and said, "I haven't played here for a long time. Can't I enjoy the feeling of recording?" In fact, he also took advantage of the fact that Shishi was taken home by Murphy for a few days to take the time to record the song that he promised to write for Murphy. It seemed to be a bit too cautious, but who asked him to be an assassin in his previous life? He can ignore the law, but he must be careful. Wang Songhai gave him a thumbs up, then counted the stack of bills, took 2 of them and pushed them back. "Summer holiday discount. You've booked it for a whole day. 1,000 is enough." Yang Yi smiled indifferently. He didn't take it, but pointed behind Wang Songhai and said, "Then change it for tea. I want your exclusive throat-soothing tea." After that, Yang Yi directly took the key and went straight to his recording studio. "Hey, 200 is too much." Wang Songhai shouted at Yang Yi's back, but Yang Yi didn't turn around. Only then did he grumble and put it away. There was a lot of work to be done today. There were 10 new songs. Yang Yi had to record the music according to different instruments and record a demo. Since Murphy knew what her voice sounded like, Yang Yi had to use professional equipment in the recording studio to edit the demo before sending it to Murphy. Therefore, after entering the recording studio, Yang Yi did not say a word. He skillfully turned on all kinds of equipment and began to work. Near Lulakang in the capital, an ordinary-looking old man wearing a felt hat walked into a small bookstore called 5 Flavors Bookstore. Yes, the scale of this bookstore was not large. It had a small front of more than 20 square meters, and one could see everything clearly from the entrance. Not only was it small, it should also be an old bookstore. There was no gorgeous decoration or scientific display. Old bookshelves surrounded a circle and were full of books. It was difficult to turn around. Of course, in addition to books, there were only books left. The old man wearing a felt hat walked in, and habitually looked up at the wall behind the cashier counter. It was also a plaque with some age, The human world is full of complicated feelings. This was the origin of the name of the bookstore. The old man had seen it countless times, but every time, he couldn't help but admire it. Of course, the calligraphy on the plaque was also from an expert. "Old Chen, you're here?" Today the bookstore was taken care of by a middle-aged man. When he saw the old man, he respectfully greeted him. "Where's your father?" The old man called Old Chen nodded slightly and asked. "He wasn't feeling well 2 days ago. I asked my wife to send him to the hospital." The middle-aged man didn't stop his work. He used a feather duster to sweep the dust on the bookshelf and smiled. "But it's nothing serious. It's just that the old man's stomach isn't feeling well." Old Chen nodded and felt relieved. Then he picked up a book and flipped through it. He casually asked, "Are there any good books recently?" In the past, when he came, it was the old shop owner who recommended books to him. The old shop owner was also a book lover. He opened his own shop, but he always had books in his hands. He was also willing to recommend good books to his customers. Old Chen liked this kind of old bookstore. If they were like the state-owned bookstores and some chain bookstores, only selling expensive books, or the employees were cold, he wouldn't be willing to go to those kinds of bookstores. "Then you've asked the right person." The middle-aged man laughed. "Recently, there are 2 popular books that are quite good. Wait a moment, I'll get them for you." Old Chen frowned and said with dissatisfaction, "I want good books. Why are you getting me popular books?" The middle-aged man poked his head out from the other side of the bookshelf and smiled. "Old Chen, don't worry. Do you think I don't know your habits? Of course, the books I recommend are good books." As he said that, he brought 2 books over. Old Chen took them and looked at them. One of them was called Soldier's Assault, while the other was called Drawing Sword. The middle-aged man explained, "Old Chen, these 2 books are very popular with young people and have high sales. However, the authors are quite good. Whether it's the story or the writing, it's first-rate. My father read these 2 books until he forgot to eat and sleep. It made his stomach feel uncomfortable. Haha, of course, I didn't mean to recommend these 2 books to you to make your stomach feel uncomfortable." The middle-aged man also found the loophole in his words and laughed. "The old shop owner likes these 2 books too?" Old Chen's interest was piqued. He took the 2 books and went straight to the cashier's counter. He took over the place and placed one book on the table while flipping through the other in his hand. The middle-aged man looked at Old Chen's casual look and laughed. He shook his head and didn't care, continuing to sweep the dust with the feather duster. There was no other place to sit in the shop, and with Old Chen's status, the middle-aged man did not think that he would do anything bad. After an unknown amount of time, it was almost noon and he was hungry. Old Chen reluctantly put away Drawing Sword in his hand and stood up. The middle-aged man was standing at the door smoking just now. When he saw the movement, he quickly put out his cigarette and came back. "Buy these 2 books. Your recommendation is good. It's 70 to 80% of your father's skills." Old Chen gave a rare compliment. The middle-aged man quickly changed the money and smiled. "Old Chen, is your next TV series going to be based on the story of these 2 books?" It turned out that Old Chen was Professor Chen Fengchen of the Capital City Academy of Drama. He was also a famous TV series director. Almost every year, Central TV would broadcast his TV series. He was a highly productive but highly demanding director. Naturally, there were many people who wrote scripts for Old Chen, but Old Chen would also dig up some excellent works and adapt them into TV series. In the past, the old shop owner recommended a good book to Old Chen that had been buried. In the end, Old Chen found someone to buy the copyright. After it was put into production, it would be Central TV's opening drama the following year. Although this story was not known to outsiders, the old shop owner still talked about it at home to this day. Old Chen was serious. He glanced at the middle-aged man and said, "Who knows?" The middle-aged man knew that Old Chen liked to keep secrets. He smiled and said, "Haha, I'm still looking forward to it. To be honest, I'm hoping to see Li Yunlong on TV." Chapter 113. The explosive sales of Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword in physical bookstores were truly surprising. It had also attracted the attention and coverage of some mainstream media. The well-known chain bookstores that had originally rejected the Sahara Publishing House, such as Love Reading, Book Bar, Book Pavilion, and so on, finally could not help but put down their reservations and come to negotiate with the Sahara Publishing House under the repeated questioning of their customers. Of course, Sahara Publishing did not reject them coldly. Who would say no to money? However, Sahara Publishing was not a pushover either. Fu Jun took the opportunity to make a request and signed a long-term partnership with them. This opened up a gap in the high-quality sales channels blocked by the big publishers and fought for more space for the future of the publishing house. However, whether it was the original state-owned bookstores, small private bookstores, or the new chain bookstores, they did not realize that the books published by Sahara Publishing, especially the two popular books by Yang Yi, were actually advertised by Sahara Online Bookstore. Or rather, they had discovered it but did not care. Online bookstore? What kind of joke was this? The high and mighty physical bookstores firmly believed that bookstores were the only way to buy physical books, and their competitors were only their peers. They didn't care about the sudden emergence of a new thing, nor did they have the intention to understand it. Sahara Online Bookstore was playing the game of making a fortune in silence. They kept the secret that the sales of Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword in their online bookstores were almost equal to half of the sales of national bookstores. They expanded rapidly according to the methods Yang Yi had taught Fu Jun. They actively cooperated with other small publishers while contacting many banks through Fu Jun's personal connections to accelerate the research and development of online banking and online payment. Sahara Online Bookstore was not well known in the country at the moment, but they were dormant, waiting for an opportunity to explode. Compared to the explosive offline sales of the two old books, the online popularity of Yuzue was no less than theirs. Whether it was old fans like Mu Yuqing or new fans, almost all of them had forgotten about Soldier Assault and Drawing Sword, which they had once been fans of for the sake of the plot of Yuzue. Everyone was completely addicted to the current Guangzhou special training plot. They didn't expect that after losing all their communication tools and money and being thrown on the street of a strange city, the one who had the best life wasn't in Jialu, who had the best grades, or Jiebing, who was the proud second generation, but Yuzue and Mouse Gang, whom they despised the most. There were many similar sighs in the book review section. Obviously, the people who sighed were secretly delighted. After all, not everyone had a perfect family background, and not everyone was a genius with excellent grades. Most of the people were actually like Yuzue and Mouse, born in the marketplace. When they saw such a character perform so well, they felt a sense of empathy and pride. Of course, the young fans would enjoy it more, while the mature bookworms would enjoy the conflict. Like Mu Yuqing, he already felt that there was something wrong with this special training. I'm afraid that Yang Dada's arrangement of this plot has a very deep meaning. How could a police officer's special training turn into PUBG? I felt that it was too troublesome. Let's not talk about Bichu. Let's talk about Mouse and Old Wang. Mouse was in a gambling stall on the streets, and Old Wang was the star of a nightclub. Was this really okay? Can they return to the police force in the future? But no matter what doubts they had, they were only in their minds. The follow-up story would have to wait for the next chapter to be updated. According to the arrangement, Yang Yi had to go to the Jiangnan military region that day. So, early in the morning, a military jeep drove to the entrance of Jiangqing Media University to pick him up. Before getting into the car, Yang Yi hesitated for a moment, then secretly threw the dagger that he had hidden in his sleeve into the grass by the roadside. Although he still felt insecure, Yang Yi understood that in this world, his identity was completely different. He was no longer the fugitive who was always on the lookout for danger. He was only invited to give a speech as a best-selling author. Who would want to harm him? On the contrary, if Yang Yi was found to have brought a dagger to the military camp, it would cause unnecessary misunderstandings. After getting into the car, the soldier who was driving looked at Yang Yi and confirmed his identity. He didn't say much and started the car. Yang Yi didn't know that the driver was General Qiu Weiguo's bodyguard. Old Master Qiu was so interested in Yang Yi that he even sent his own bodyguard to pick up Yang Yi. However, bodyguards were all taciturn people. They were used to not listening and not talking. Naturally, they wouldn't be like the taxi driver, who would chat even if he had something to say. Yang Yi was actually a taciturn person. He didn't want to chat, so he didn't say anything all the way until they reached the military camp. When the jeep drove into the gate that was guarded by guards, the guards puffed out their chests and raised their hands to salute. Yang Yi had an impulse and couldn't help but raise his hands to salute back. Although the movement wasn't loud, the driver still noticed it. He looked at Yang Yi with some surprise, but he still kept quiet and didn't say anything. After getting out of the car, Yang Yi looked around with some emotions. They were all very simple buildings. They weren't very tall, at most 4 or 5 stories. Each of them stood like sentinels in the military camp. There was only one color in the army's territory, and that was green. Green vegetation, green trees, and the soldiers who were walking around were all wearing camouflage green uniforms. It was very familiar and very intimate. It was right to come this time because Yang Yi felt that the obsession in his heart seemed to have found an outlet, and was slowly disappearing. This is your home. Perhaps it's better to leave you here? Yang Yi thought to himself. Of course, Yang Yi wouldn't miss the military camp. Looking at what he was wearing today, it was obvious that he was wearing a loose shirt, casual pants, and flat shoes. Rather than saying that he was a veteran, it would be better to say that he was a casual businessman. You are Yang Yi? A voice interrupted Yang Yi's thoughts. How could he be so careless? Yang Yi secretly reprimanded himself. He didn't take any precautions at all, and only thought about letting his imagination run wild. He turned his head and saw 2 old men with white hair and beards walking towards him. Both of them were wearing military uniforms and had a dignified temperament. Obviously, they weren't small fries. Yes. Greetings, Chief. Yang Yi didn't know how to respond for a moment. He could only imitate some of the body movements of his predecessor. He stood up straight and saluted them. As expected, you were a soldier. The slightly shorter old man laughed and said to the other one, Old Chiu, you guessed it right. The slightly taller old man was General Chiu Weigua. Old Chiu looked at Yang Yi with admiration and said with a smile, Do you still need to guess? To be able to write such a good article, you must be a soldier trained by our army. Little comrade, which army are you from? Old Chiu asked. Yang Yi hesitated. Chapter 114. Yang Yi finally said, Sorry, I can't tell you. Elder Chiu and the other old man looked at each other in surprise. There was something that couldn't be told to them? This was too strange. This is the former commander-in-chief of the 4th Army and the current military advisor of the Jiangnan military region, General Chiu Weigua. This is the former chief of staff of the 6th Army and the current military advisor of the Jiangnan military region, General Zheng Lingxing. At this time, another general with stars on his shoulders walked over. He said in a loud voice, In front of them, any secret lower than A is not a secret. The so-called military advisor is just a title. Elder Chiu laughed and pointed at the people who came over. He said to Yang Yi, This is the deputy commander-in-chief of the Jiangnan military region, Lu Pengjiu. Even if your secret is higher than A, you can still tell him. Yang Yi's forehead started to sweat. Wasn't this treatment 2F** King luxurious? 3 generals came to greet him as soon as he got out of the car? Of course, Yang Yi didn't know that Elder Chiu and Elder Zheng were just bored and wanted to see what the author of the 2 books looked like. As for General Lu, he just happened to pass by after a meeting. He saw the 2 old men and wanted to greet them. He just happened to hear their conversation. Since General Lu said so, how could Yang Yi be stubborn and not say anything? With the power of these 3 generals, it would only take a few minutes for them to check his background. Yang Yi saluted and shouted, Former subordinate of the Southwest Military Region's Battle Wolf Special Forces, Yang Yi greets the chief. But when Yang Yi said this, the 3 generals all sucked in a breath of cold air. Battle Wolf? Special forces were not rare. Every military region and former army had them. But the Southwest Military Region's Battle Wolf was not ordinary. They were in the troubled land of the Southwest. They often had to face the threat of small warlords or armed drug dealers. This special force was truly an elite force tempered by the flames of war. Every year during the military competition, the team sent by the Jiangnan military region did not want to meet the people from the Southwest military region, especially the experts of the Battle Wolf Special Forces. Although it wasn't to the extent of being completely crushed, it was still impossible to get any points from them. This was also why the three generals had such a deep impression of this special force. However, old General Chiu looked at Yang Yi and asked suspiciously, "Are you serious? It doesn't look like it." From the looks of it, Yang Yi did not look like a special forces soldier. His skin was not dark enough. Yang Yi's skin was already dark compared to normal people, but compared to the soldiers who were exposed to the sun and rain every day, Yang Yi's skin had become a little paler in the past few years. His figure wasn't solid enough either. Yang Yi was wearing a loose shirt today. From his appearance, he was indeed tall and masculine, but it couldn't show off his muscles. More importantly, Yang Yi did not have the killing intent of Zhang Lang and the other special forces. The look in his eyes was sparse and ordinary, no different from an ordinary person. Naturally, they didn't understand that Yang Yi's qi restraining skill could be seen through by them. However, old General Chiu's words aroused Yang Yi's arrogance. Other things didn't matter, but being a member of Zhang Lang was the pride of his predecessor's life. How could he allow others to question him? Yang Yi smiled faintly and said, "Whether it's true or not, won't we know after we test it?" "Hey, I think Xiao Yang's words are good." Old General Zeng patted old General Chiu and smiled. "What he said is true and not false. If you don't think it's true, you have to test it." Old General Chiu couldn't stand the provocation, and immediately called for his guard. "Xiao Yan, come over and test with our guest. See if Xiao Yang is really a soldier from Zhang Lang." Xiao Yan was the guard who drove to pick up Yang Yi. He was 22 or 23 years old. In the ordinary army, he was considered excellent in all aspects. However, Yang Yi could tell at a glance that the other party was very weak. Not to mention Yang Yi, he probably couldn't even fight with the ordinary special forces soldiers. However, Yang Yi was still calm. He smiled faintly and began to unbutton his watch and shirt. He only wore one shirt today. If he accidentally tore it, where would he get a change of clothes? Lu Pingju watched with interest. He also wanted to know Yang Yi's strength. Now everyone's attention had shifted from what kind of person the author of the two books are, to whether Yang Yi was a member of Zhang Lang. Of course, he could also call the Southwest Military Region to ask, but that wouldn't be as interesting as it was now. Yang Yi had just taken off his shirt when old General Chiu looked at him differently. It turned out that there was so much material under the shirt. His muscles were firm, and his abs were like plates. With such a figure, Yang Yi's words were probably more believable. "Little Yang, you're hiding your strength." Old General Chiu smiled meaningfully and then said to his guard, "Little Yan, you have to show some real skills." After Xiao Yan heard that Yang Yi was from Zhang Lang, his eyes were filled with eagerness. He didn't even need old Master Chiu to remind him. He had a serious expression on his face, as if he was facing the most important college entrance examination in his life. Yang Yi, on the other hand, acted very naturally. He put the things aside and walked slowly to Xiao Yan. He didn't have a tense expression like little Yan. Instead, he looked relaxed and even beckoned to the other party. "Come on. Be careful." Little Yan wanted to be polite, but when he saw that Yang Yi didn't take him seriously, he was unhappy. He shouted, took a step forward, and threw a standard military punch from his waist. Yang Yi turned sideways and dodged Little Yan's punch. Of course, Little Yan had another move. He turned around and threw a hook punch at Yang Yi's waist. He still had a trick up his sleeve. This punch was more threatening if it hit the ribs or the head. Yang Yi's reaction was fast. He immediately turned sideways and dodged the hook. At the same time, he used his shoulder to knock the other party away. The difference in strength was too big. Yang Yi fought very easily, but he didn't plan to end the fight immediately. After all, Little Yan's merciful performance left a good impression on him. Since Little Yan was merciful, there was no need for him to be ruthless. Yang Yi only blocked and didn't fight back at first. After a few rounds with Little Yan, it looked like he was still in a difficult situation. Little Yan was confused because he was too involved. He thought that he could take down Yang Yi if he put in more effort. Suddenly, Yang Yi stepped forward and threw a punch with his right fist. Little Yan's left and right arms were almost knocked away at the same time. Just as the center door was wide open, Yang Yi's right hand was like a knife, stabbing toward little Yan's throat. The whole process was too fast. Almost no one saw how Yang Yi suddenly beat little Yan to the point that he couldn't fight back. Only little Yan felt the shadow of death at that moment. Luckily, Yang Yi's hand stopped half a centimeter away from little Yan's throat. "Thank you for letting me win." Yang Yi smiled and retracted his hand. He gently patted little Yan's shoulder, who was still covered in cold sweat and dumbfounded. Note 1. The military plot is just a small episode, so it's written here that Yang Yi is from Wolf Warriors. Yes, little Yan is paying tribute to a dedicated, handsome, and awesome action actor-director. That's right, it's him. Everyone, shout his name loudly. Chapter 115. It was close to noon, and the sun was shining brightly in the Jiangnan Military Region's Dong'er training ground. The surrounding grass was steaming with water vapor that distorted the light. However, no one was thinking of avoiding the heat. A group of people stood under the hot sun and shouted as they watched the competition. "Go Guadabao. Don't be a coward, just do it." Old Master Chiu, who was old but vigorous, was also waving his arms and shouting like a young man under the hot sun. The person confronting Yang Yi in the field was Guadabao from the Jiangnan Military Region's Viper Special Forces. Born in Sangzhou, he had practiced martial arts since he was young. In the Jiangnan Military Region, he was the best fighter. Even Guadabao was sent up. It could be seen that Yang Yi had defeated many of the Jiangnan Military Region's experts. Guadabao's expression was very serious. He didn't immediately rush forward to attack. The shirtless man in front of him gave him a lot of pressure. Guadabao saw the previous match and knew that Yang Yi was very strong. Come on! Although Yang Yi was also sweating profusely at this moment, and his strong muscles looked as if they had been smeared with olive oil, he still had that carefree look on his face, revealing a cold front. Style smile that deserved a beating. Without wasting any more time, the two of them began to fight. As soon as Guadabao made his move, Yang Yi recognized that this guy practiced Qiguan fist. These two ape arms were wide open and fiercely attacked Yang Yi's vital points. He was really an expert. Once he made his move, it was obvious whether he was skilled or not. Guadabao's martial arts were real, unlike little Yan's who only had airs. Yang Yi felt the sharp wind and didn't dare to take it head-on. He twisted his body and raised his arms to block. However, the Qiguan fist was a form of attack. Every attack must be followed. Every attack must be followed. At first, Yang Yi still had the thought of going easy on his opponent. However, when he blocked, he was at a disadvantage. Guadabao didn't show any mercy and took advantage of the situation. If it was high, he would hang it. If it was low, he would chop it. If it was horizontal, he would block it. If it was smooth, he would move it. Guadabao's arms were sometimes like rods, sometimes like whips, and sometimes like snakes. Within a few seconds, he had thrown out 10 punches, causing Yang Yi to be somewhat flustered in his defense. Moreover, Guadabao was about the same size as Yang Yi, but he was a bit more muscular. His fists and arms were very strong, and Yang Yi's arms were numb from the shock when he tried to block. Guadabao was unforgiving. Just as he was fighting fiercely with Yang Yi, he suddenly changed his stance. His lower limbs twisted, his waist cut, and his left arm like a whip. Yang Yi really wasn't prepared for this move. Even though he tried his best to turn his head and dissipate most of the force, Guadabao's fist still landed on his face. Great! The crowd cheered. The people from the Jiangnan Military Region couldn't help but shout excitedly. From this, it could be seen that Yang Yi had consecutively defeated their experts, causing them to feel extremely sullen. On the other hand, Guadabao was a bit embarrassed. He withdrew his hand, scratched his head and apologized. I didn't stop this. Yang Yi reached out and touched it. A bit of blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. However, this was just a small injury. Yang Yi didn't take it to heart. On the contrary, it was stained with blood. These days, Yang Yi had made himself more cultured and refined, revealing some of his original wildness. No problem. Let's go again. Yang Yi grinned excitedly. He raised his two fists and got into a fighting stance. In the end, Guadabao was the #1 expert in the Jiangnan Military Region. If it was only based on punches and kicks, Guadabeo's strength was very strong. Yang Yi's interest was completely raised. Good. Again. Guadabeo was also very happy. He shouted and took the initiative to attack again. This time, Yang Yi didn't passively defend. He also fought with Guadabeo head-on. How strong was Yang Yi when he was serious? He didn't understand it himself, but without using his internal energy, Yang Yi and Guadabeo's fists were on par with each other. This was still Yang Yi using the Hong Quan that his predecessor had learned in elementary school. The Hong Quan had the power of a lion and tiger, and also the dexterity of a white crane. The Zhongquan also had the combination of hardness and softness. The two experts were fighting with their fists, and the next moment, they were moving nimbly. It was a battle of wits and courage. This made the Special Forces soldiers who were watching the scene frightened, and couldn't help but be excited. However, Guadabeo was still not as good as Yang Yi. Yang Yi suddenly changed his move. He used the body movement that he learned in his previous life. He suddenly circled around Guadabeo's back. Guadabeo was shocked. He wanted to turn around, but he was punched by Yang Yi in the ribs. When he came back to his senses, Yang Yi had already completed the chokehold and neck-twisting action. Of course, he didn't really kill him, but Guadabeo understood that if he was really on the battlefield, he would already be dead. I lost. Guadabeo was still very open-minded. He lowered his hand and sighed as he admitted defeat. Even so, his teammates at the side of the field still gave him an encouraging applause. Of course, they also applauded for this wonderful duel. Yang Yi's victory wasn't easy. He had to use some of his trump cards. He was also sweating all over, but he still grinned and gave Guadabeo a friendly hug. Zhan Lang is indeed Zhan Lang. Do you see, there is always someone better than you. In the future, you should train hard and train hard. In fact, the old man had already acknowledged Yang Yi's words. At this moment, he was still using Yang Yi to reprimand this group of people who were narrow-minded. Yes. The surrounding soldiers of the Viper Special Forces responded one after another. Although some of them were still smiling, their eyes were already showing a serious light. They looked at Yang Yi and were especially fanatical. It was a pity that Yang Yi wasn't a woman. At noon, Old Master Chiu and Old Master Zeng dragged Yang Yi to Old Master Chiu's house for lunch. It was originally arranged to be in the military cafeteria, but Old Master Chiu's granddaughter wanted to see what her idol looked like, so Old Master Chiu agreed without hesitation. Chiu Shaoqian was quite enthusiastic about Yang Yi. Moreover, when she saw Yang Yi, who had an elegant temperament after wearing his shirt, she had a good impression of him. However, it was a pity that Yang Yi arrived home very late after a round of fighting. After Chiu Shaoqian saw Yang Yi, she could only greet him and rush to school. With Xiao Yang's skills, how many years has it been since he retired? Lu Pingju finished his work and also rushed over to eat. He already knew about the news of Yang Yi's great power in the martial arts arena, and defeated all the masters in the Jiangnan military region. Not too short. More than 5 years. Yang Yi said truthfully. More than 5 years? Didn't Yang Yi retire at the age of 25 or 26? The three generals were a little surprised. Old Master Chiu was even more curious. He asked, with your skills, there must not be many battle wolves. Are they willing to let you go? Although battle wolves was very powerful, they were only more experienced in actual combat, and had been tempered in blood and fire to become stronger. In terms of individual skills, it was impossible for battle wolves to casually come out and defeat the number one master of another military region. The source of soldiers was similar. Battle wolves didn't select the strongest people in the country. If they could reach this level, the other military regions wouldn't be able to survive. Yang Yi smiled faintly and said, "It's not a glorious thing to talk about, but it's not that I can't say it. At that time in Battle Wolves, there was one time when I went out to perform a mission. I met a guy who was touching and bullying girls, so I beat him up and sent him to the hospital. I didn't expect his father to have such a deep background in the army, so I could only pack up and leave. Of course, if I knew, I would still beat him up. I don't regret it." After hearing Yang Yi's words, Old Master Chiu, who also had a granddaughter, immediately blew his beard and glared. He slammed the table and said, "Who is it? Tell me." Although this old man has retired, I still have a few old subordinates. I will seek justice for you. Chapter 116. Elder Chiu was a person who loved talent. And he had a fiery temper. He was an upright general who couldn't tolerate anything. When he said that he wanted to get justice for Yang Yi, he really wanted to do it. He didn't care about the consequences at all. Lu Pingju, who was next to him, was a bit shrewd. He looked at Elder Chiu and then looked at Yang Yi, but didn't say anything. Yang Yi shook his head with a wry smile and said, "No thank you, General Chiu." "Why?" Elder Zeng couldn't help but ask. "Chiu Weiguo wants to get justice for you." "How rare is that?" "Because..." Yang Yi smiled wryly. He finally sighed and said a name. "Because it's Lu Donglai." "Lu Donglai?" Elder Chiu didn't react. He had been retired for too long. Lu Donglai. Lu Pingju opened his mouth. He looked at Yang Yi with some surprise. Seeing Yang Yi nod, he smiled and said, "So it's him. No wonder you said no." Lu Pingju saw Elder Chiu's puzzled look and explained to him. Lu Donglai used to be the head of the logistics department of the Southwest Military Region. He was one of XX's people. 2 years ago, something happened to XX, and he lost his backing. Last year, he was investigated. Yes, Yang Yi originally wanted to help his predecessor, but he saw the news in his predecessor's memory. Lu Donglai was shot at the beginning of this year. His son was also found out because of many cases and sentenced to decades of imprisonment. But the execution of the culprit didn't bring any joy to the original Yang Yi. Because what was the use of those bad guys being punished? Could he get back what he had lost? 5 years had passed, and he could no longer return to the familiar barracks. He could no longer fight side by side with his brothers. Of course, it was only the original Yang Yi who was in pain. The current Yang Yi didn't care at all. So when Lu Pingju, who had let go of his worries, threw an olive branch to him, Little Yang's skills are still the same as before. It would be a pity if he left the military because of this. Lu Pingju became enthusiastic. He smiled and said, "Why don't you come to our Jiangnan military region? Even if you don't go to the front lines, you can still be an instructor for Viper." Old Master Zeng smiled and said, "Since little Lu has spoken, this is a rare opportunity. Little Yang, you have to think about it. It's not bad to come back and be a soldier." Old Master Chiu had also forgotten about Yang Yi's book. He sighed and said, "Yang Yi, with your skills, it's a waste of talent if you don't stay in the army." Yang Yi, of course, shook his head with a smile and said, "Thank you for your favor, General Lu. But now I have a family and my own business, and my daughter is still young. Although I really miss the past, I also need to cherish the life I have now. I'm sorry, but I can't let them go and return to the military camp." Lu Pingju felt a little regretful, but he was still an open-minded person, so he did not try to persuade him. Instead, he raised his cup to Yang Yi, using tea as wine to toast Yang Yi for his years of fighting for the country. According to the original plan, Yang Yi came to the field at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and gave a speech to the recruits who had been recruited this year. Even though it was 4 o'clock and the open-air field was still very hot, Yang Yi was not afraid. Below the field, there were thousands of recruits who had already been training under the scorching sun for 2 hours. They were tanned to the point of rosy, and their backs were drenched in sweat. He had to set an example. After stepping onto the stage, Yang Yi received the attention of thousands of fanatical eyes. Before this, these recruits had used the little time they had after training to read Yang Yi's book. They were already very curious about the author. At noon, Yang Yi and Viper's people competed in the East Second Martial Arts practice field. Some recruits who passed by saw it. Although they did not know that Yang Yi was a member of Battle Wolves, which was ordered to be kept secret, the news that the author of Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword was also a former soldier quickly spread in the military region. What was an idol? This was what an idol was. Yang Yi still followed the rules and thanked them before getting to the point. Military discipline and conscience. These are the topics I want to talk to you about today. The topic was still in line with the rules. Several leaders nodded in satisfaction. We all come from all over the world and came here for the same purpose. Yang Yi opened with a famous quote, but it had never appeared in this world before. It sounded profound and somewhat unfathomable. Maybe some of you are like Cheng Kai, with good family conditions and high self-esteem. You want to join the army and achieve great things. Maybe some of you are like Su Sanduo, born poor and sent to the barracks without knowing anything. I don't know if you will raise your hands when you see a tank, but I hope you won't. Yang Yi's words caused some laughter in the audience. I know, there are some friends like Li Yunlong. They are unruly, but they have great talent in their vulgarity. It's good to be brothers with such people, but don't be his wife. No, think about that monk. It's dangerous to be brothers with him. The audience roared with laughter. Even the leaders on the stage couldn't help but laugh. Was Yang Yi mocking himself? After everyone finished laughing, Yang Yi said, "But no matter where you come from, what kind of experience you have in the past, and what kind of character you have when you come to the army, you have to put aside the word ego. Because we have iron military discipline. Moreover, not every squad leader is like Shi Jin, and not every political commissar is like Zhao Gang." There was still laughter in the audience, but it was much quieter. Gradually, they all started to ponder. Novels are novels after all. Many idealized things don't work well in reality. When you come to the army, you must first learn to abide by military discipline. You must quickly get rid of your ego and integrate into the big group. You must even forget the word ego. You must remember us in your heart. Yang Yi looked at the audience and said loudly, "This is actually another interpretation of the spirit of not giving up in soldiers' assault." The audience applauded thunderously. After talking about military discipline for a while, Yang Yi changed the topic and said, "But I have a question for everyone. When you encounter a conflict between military discipline and reality, what will you choose?" What does this question mean? Yang Yi didn't let them think too much. He just gave an example, but it wasn't his example. In the past, I had a comrade and two brothers in the team who sent the ashes of a comrade who had sacrificed himself home. But they encountered demolition. The demolition people were very arrogant. The leader said, "You soldiers can protect them for a while, but can you protect them forever? When you are gone, see if I don't kill them." Yang Yi's story had already caused some commotion. The rookies all clenched their fists in anger. Yes, my comrade took off his hat and jacket. He would rather give up his military uniform to avenge the orphan and the widow. His martial arts were very strong. With just one kick, he kicked the man into the excavator. Even if he didn't die, he didn't have much breath left. Well done. The rookies below the stage couldn't help but shout, one after another. Yes, he did well, beautifully. But unfortunately, because of military discipline, he was forced to retire. And because of intentional injury, my comrade even spent a few years in prison. Yang Yi said sadly. But I asked him, "Lung, do you think it was worth it?" He said yes. If I didn't do it, I would be letting down my conscience. This result was very heavy. The soldiers below the stage all fell silent. So, I want to talk about the problem of conscience. No matter when, please remember what your real purpose of becoming a soldier should be. Yang Yi said, "Maybe some people want to say it's to get promoted and get rich, and some people say it's to eat, like Cheng Kai and Su Sanduo. Their purpose of becoming a soldier was not clear at the beginning, but I hope that you can be like them. As you grow up, you can understand the responsibility you bear, and that is to protect the country. Maybe in the future, you will be like my comrade, like Li Yunlong, like Su Sanduo. If you encounter something difficult, you might violate military discipline, and you might have to leave the military camp. At this time, think about your original heart. If it goes against your original heart, corruption, please don't do it. Don't let this military uniform be stained with dirt. If it's in line with your original heart, please make the right choice." Because no matter how great the price in the future is, it will be worth it. Although Yang Yi's speech made some of the leaders around him tremble in fear, Lu Pingju did not make any objections, so they could only listen in silence. However, the recruits below the stage were surging with emotions. When Yang Yi finished, they gave him a long round of applause. Yang Yi, on the other hand, was secretly wiping his sweat. The things he said today were actually mixed in with some of his own things. What military discipline? That was just a pretense. His real intention was the latter half of the sentence. Why did he have to follow so many rules? If he was unhappy, he would just do it. Fortunately, he covered it up well, and did not arouse the disgust of the leaders. Who knew if he would be able to teach a group of demon kings? Hee. Note 1. Little Han does not know how many people a military region recruits, but due to the venue, let's take it as thousands. Please don't be too realistic. Note 2. This story is also a tribute to Wolf Warrior 2 and Lung Feng. If you haven't seen a movie before, quickly go buy a movie ticket and give it to the director. Little Han said that his blood was boiling at that time. Chapter 117. There were no more incidents at the military camp. Yang Yi was sent back that night. Of course, he couldn't avoid getting drunk. Luckily, Yang Yi used his inner strength to force out some alcohol so that he wouldn't be knocked out. It was Xiaoyan who drove Yang Yi to the main entrance of Rivertown Media University. After Yang Yi got out of the car, he was in a daze for a while. I seem to have forgotten something. Yang Yi finally shook his head and went home to sleep. Forget it, I must have drunk too much. He had indeed forgotten something. The dagger that he had thrown away in the morning was still lying in the grass, looking pitifully at the moonlight. A few days later, the dagger was found by the gardener who was in charge of cutting the grass. The rumor that there might be roaming robbers near Rivertown Media University spread around the campus, causing some students who were still in school to panic. At that time, Yang Yi remembered that he had really forgotten to pick up the dagger. However, this was all in the future. This trip to the military camp was a rare occasion where his true self was exposed. The subsequent impact was still slowly spreading. After Yang Yi's speech at the military camp, this news was inevitably leaked to his fan circle. Although the process of spreading was a little slow, many people in the book review and comment section started to discuss it fervently within a few days. I heard that the author used to be a soldier himself. I heard that Yang Yi is very strong and even beat up a Special Forces soldier? Haha, I remember a previous post where a reader who revealed himself to be a Special Forces soldier analyzed it. He said that the details in the novel were very real, and Yang Yi was definitely a retired Special Forces soldier. At that time, there were people who mocked that it was impossible. The thing that writers don't lack the least is imagination. How can one write about a Special Forces soldier and be a Special Forces soldier himself? Now it's a slap in the face. That's right. Someone who can describe the details of a girl's makeup and hair well might not be a cross-dresser. But someone who can write accurate and detailed details of a special operation must be a Special Forces soldier. After all, the experience of a Special Forces soldier is still very rare. Without personal experience, how can one write well? After hearing about Yang Yi's identity, I'm relieved. All of you weaklings, come over here and kneel before the Special Forces boss. Upstairs, you guys are making our hearts itch. What does Yang Yi look like? Was he handsome? How old is he? Was he married? Why isn't there any information about him on the internet? Same question. Yang Yi's book is selling so well, but he doesn't even hold a book signing event. Isn't that too much? That's right. Editor, I know you're reading it. Hurry up and inform the author to come out and organize a signing event. We want to meet in person. If it's a signing event, I'll definitely support it. I bought the book when it was on sale, but if I come to Shanghai for a book signing, I'll buy 10 more books on the spot and give them to my friends. Top floor. However, these appeals were of no use. Yang Yi was still unwilling to be a public figure. He mercilessly rejected Fu Jun's repeated requests for signings, and also rejected Qi Yu's invitations for offline events. He really had a lot of things to do. Opening the shop and spending time with his daughter was the most important thing. The next day after Yang Yi came back, he went to pick up Shishi. The little girl called early in the morning and asked loudly, "Has Papa been caught in that terrible place and hasn't come back yet?" When he arrived at Murphy's house, Yang Yi nodded to the nanny, Auntie Zhu, who opened the door with some embarrassment. The last time he came over, he was not so friendly. Because of that incident, Auntie Zhu and Yang Yi were quite embarrassed to face each other. She found an excuse and hid in her nanny's room. "Papa, I'm so worried about you." Shishi was indeed her father's considerate little cotton-padded jacket. As soon as she came up, she couldn't wait to throw herself into her father's arms and called out in a very pleasant voice. "What are you worried about? Isn't Papa fine?" Yang Yi smiled and pinched the little girl's nose. Murphy also started to pack up now. While she folded some of Shishi's underwear and put it into the box, she complained. "After being spoiled by you for a few days, she's become more and more naughty. She's only been home for 2 days, and she's already clamoring to go back to Papa's place. Because Papa will make delicious food for Shishi." Shishi pouted and said unhappily. Murphy pursed her lips and pretended to be very wronged. "Then Mom won't make delicious food for Shishi. Shishi doesn't want Mom anymore, right?" No, how could Shishi not want Mom?" The little girl hurriedly waved her hand. "Then what should we do?" Murphy teased her. Shishi tilted her head and thought for a moment, then said innocently, "Mom can live with Papa and Shishi. That way, Papa can also make delicious food for Mom." Yang Yi didn't say a word and only listened with interest. Murphy glanced at Yang Yi's smiling appearance. She rolled her eyes at him in annoyance and kicked him when she handed over the luggage to Yang Yi. What? Although it didn't hurt or itch, Yang Yi still felt puzzled. "You mother and daughter are bickering. I'm just watching the show. How can I be implicated?" "Nothing." Murphy snorted. When they were about to leave, Murphy called out to Yang Yi. She hesitated for a moment and said, "That's right. After I'm done with this trip, I'll ask Sister Ling for half a month's leave for the next half a month. Then I'll find a kindergarten for Shishi with you." "What's a kindergarten?" Shishi asked curiously. "A kindergarten is a very fun place," Murphy coaxed. "For the next half a month, I want to stay at your place." Murphy didn't finish speaking and quickly added a few words of explanation. "But this is because Shishi always wants to stay at your place. I want to accompany her." Okay. Shishi cheered happily. "Mama's going to live at Papa's house." "Okay." Yang Yi nodded and said. This reaction was a bit cold. It couldn't even compare to Shishi. Murphy said with some dissatisfaction. "What? You're still not happy?" Yang Yi complained. "Where is that? You can stay for as many days as you want." At this moment, Murphy seemed to have seen something and suddenly grabbed the luggage in Yang Yi's hand. "Wait a minute, don't go yet. Come over here and let me see." Yang Yi was inexplicably pulled into the living room. Under the bright light, Shishi was also put down. "Yang Yi, squat down," Murphy ordered. "What?" Yang Yi was confused, but he still obediently squatted down. Cece, on the other hand, watched curiously from the side. Yang Yi, who had just squatted down, suddenly felt a fragrance. Murphy, who was wearing home clothes, walked in front of him, but before he could size her up, his face was cupped by Murphy's hands and gently lifted up. Looking from bottom to top, Murphy's delicate and flawless face was still breathtakingly beautiful. It really was 360 degrees without any blind spots. However, Murphy frowned. She gently touched the corner of Yang Yi's mouth, which still had some traces of the wound, and asked suspiciously, "Where did you go yesterday? How did you get injured?" Yang Yi saw that he couldn't hide it anymore, so he could only tell the truth. "When I went to the army, I couldn't avoid sparring with the experts, and I accidentally got punched. But it's okay, I still won." "How could you be so reckless? Why did you fight with others for no reason?" Murphy didn't care whether he won or lost, and said anxiously, "Your mouth is cracked. Does it still hurt?" Yang Yi didn't know why, but he felt warm in his heart. This small wound couldn't be compared to the injuries he suffered in his previous life, but in his previous life, no one cared about him like this. "It's okay, it's just a small injury," Yang Yi comforted. "Actually, I was too careless. If I was more serious, he wouldn't even be able to touch me." "You still dare to say fighting is wrong?" Murphy said angrily. "Are you hurt anywhere? I'll find something to wipe it for you." Okay, it's my fault. But there's really no need. It's just a small injury, it's not that serious." Yang Yi stood up, held down the anxious Murphy, and persuaded her. Chapter 118. In fact, although Murphy's concern made Yang Yi feel very warm, Her skills were still difficult to compliment. The corner of Yang Yi's mouth was injured. In the end, Murphy rummaged through the medical kit at home for a long time, but she didn't know what to do. In the end, she disinfected Yang Yi's mouth with light salt water, and then put a small band-aid on it. This band-aid was bought for Shi as a backup. Yang Yi didn't know if a band-aid could be used for a mouth injury, but for an 8-foot-tall man like him, to have a small band-aid with a cartoon on the back of his mouth, he felt like he was going to collapse. However, he couldn't refuse Murphy's sincerity, so Yang Yi could only accept it with a bitter face. It wasn't until he drove Shi home that he secretly tore it apart and threw it away back at her father's house. Shi was like a kitten that had run wild. She ran around like a striped cat, happily patrolling her territory. Was her favorite dress in the wardrobe hung up properly? Was her big bear cub and other toys in the correct position on the bed? Have any of the other toys in the box been touched? It wasn't until Yang Yi called her to take a bath that she stopped. As usual, after bathing, the little girl would wait for her father to tell her a story, and then go to bed. However, the little girl was still a little mischievous today. She jumped on the bed in her underwear. When her father wanted to put on a nightgown for her, she giggled and hid. Yang Yi had to use his real skills. He stretched out his long arm and caught the mischievous little girl. When she opened her mouth and giggled, he helped her put on her clothes. "Are you that happy? Back to Daddy's place?" Yang Yi touched her nose dotingly and asked. Yes. She nestled in her father's arms and nodded obediently. However, soon, she couldn't stay still and struggled to get up from her father's arms. Yang Yi squat down. She imitated her mother today and said coolly with her hands on her waist. Murphy obviously didn't put her hands on her waist. Yang Yi was stunned. He didn't know what the little guy was going to do. "Hurry up, Papa, hurry up and squat down." The little fellow anxiously stamped her feet on the bed and urged. All right, Yang Yi still obeyed the emperor's order. He first stood up from the bed, then bent his knees and squatted on the bed. She moved closer, but how could the little one reach it? Even if Daddy squats down, he's still too tall. "Squat down a little more." She pressed on her father's shoulder, and said while jumping up and down. Yang Yi had no choice but to bend down again. In the end, he simply kneeled on the bed with one leg, and used the other to support his balance. Only then could he be on equal footing with the little girl who was standing. "Let me take a look at your wound." She imitated her father to the end. She held her father's face with her small hands and looked distressed. She opened her big eyes and leaned over. Yang Yi could not help but smile. "Oh, you can't smile. Your mouth is injured." She pouted and said. Yang Yi quickly restrained his smile and pursed his lips. "All right. I saw it. Yang Yi, your mouth is injured. What should we do?" The little fellow tilted her head and thought. She, don't worry. It's a lot better now. It'll be completely healed tomorrow." Yang Yi, who had zero cooperative ability, was still comforting Shi. However, the little girl suddenly lowered her head and smacked the corner of her father's mouth. It was really just the corner of his mouth. Yang Yi subconsciously turned his face sideways. The place where Shi kissed was almost the same as his cheek. Even so, Yang Yi was still stunned by his daughter's words. "All right. Mom said that wherever it hurts, Shi will kiss it, and it won't hurt anymore." The little girl innocently patted her father's shoulder and said boldly, "Yang Yi, you won't feel pain anymore." Although Yang Yi often let Shi kiss his cheek, or he would kiss his daughter's forehead intimately, this was a small problem. Of course, the little fellow did not know anything, but Yang Yi was a little conflicted. He even complained, "Comrade Murphy, do you know that it's very problematic for you to instill some concepts into Shishi's head? Do you know that your precious daughter, stole the first kiss that originally belonged to you, her father?" Did Yang Yi still have his first kiss? He really did not know. But in his memory, this guy really did not have any intimate contact with other girls. As for the crazy night in the maple forest in the car, his memory was fragmented. He did not know if Yang Yi had kissed her. For the time being, he thought that there was still one. After being speechless for a long time, Yang Yi still felt uncomfortable in his heart. Although in some news reports in his previous life, there were many celebrities who kissed their children mouth to mouth. This might be a way to express love, but Yang Yi felt that it was wrong. However, she did not have such awareness. After the little fellow had enough, she climbed into the quilt by herself, patted the position next to her, and shouted, "Papa, come quickly, tell Shishi a story." Yang Yi shook his head, put aside this distracting thought, and went to tell his daughter a story. However, Shishi did not seem to have the awareness that men and women should not touch each other. Yang Yi felt that it was necessary to discuss with Murphy to teach Shishi some precautionary knowledge. Otherwise, when she went to kindergarten, she might have to come into contact with other little boys when her father was not around. Yang Yi did not want his daughter to kiss other little boys. How dare there be such a bold boy? Kill him with a knife. Yang Yi thought fiercely in his heart. "Papa, what story are you going to tell Shishi today?" the little girl asked sweetly. Yes, what story should he tell his daughter? In the past few months, Shishi had almost emptied his stomach of the Western fairy tales. And many of them were made up by him, using the Western fairy tales. "I have to tell a longer story. It's best if I can tell it for a while." Yang Yi thought secretly. He smiled and said to his daughter, "Today Papa will tell Shishi a monkey story." "A monkey story?" Shishi was interested. "Is it the kind of monkey that can eat apple and bananas?" Shishi has seen it on TV. Murphy had not taken Shishi to the zoo yet. Most of the little fellow's knowledge came from TV. Yes, a long time ago, our world was divided into 5 places. The one in the east was called Dongxing Divine Continent, and the one in the west was called Aparagodania Continent. Yes, the story Yang Yi wanted to tell Shishi was Journey to the West. Yang Yi's memory of his previous life was very clear. He could remember the complete story of Journey to the West, including every word in it. However, Yang Yi wanted to tell the story of Journey to the West to his 4-year-old daughter. Naturally, he could not just read classical Chinese. He had to tell the story in his own language. Even so, Shishi still did not understand the names of these continents. She pouted and said, "What are they called?" "I can't remember." Yang Yi comforted her. "It doesn't matter if you can't remember. Shishi only needs to know that in the east, there is a country called Aolai Country, and there is a mountain of flowers and fruits." "Why is it called Mountain of Flowers and Fruits?" Shishi asked. "Because the mountain is full of flowers, and there are many fruits on the trees." Yang Yi laughed. He was already used to being interrupted by the little 100,000 Ys when he was telling a story. "Wow. So good. Well, there is also a stone on the mountain. This stone is not ordinary." Yang Yi continued to tell the story. Shishi was already fascinated by it. Chapter 119. Murphy's serious attitude towards music was incomparable to that of ordinary singers. Even though she didn't have any work today, she still had the habit of coming to her studio early to practice her voice. After all, the studio had a soundproof wall, and practicing at home would disturb the neighbors. In the middle of her practice, Murphy went to the bathroom. On her way back, she suddenly heard a few weak calls. Meow meow. A cat? Murphy followed the sound in confusion. Not long after, she saw a kitten squatting in the corner of some rotten cabinets and drawers that were waiting to be cleaned up, crying helplessly. It was a little kitten, about 1.5 months old. It was at the age where it could run and jump and was full of curiosity about the world. She just didn't know why it had run here. Murphy felt pity for it. She squatted down and gently lifted the little guy up. The little kitten was still very scared, but maybe it was too hungry, so its movements were a little slow and it couldn't resist. Murphy, who had liked cats since she was a child, recognized its breed at a glance. It had short hair, a round face, small ears, and big round eyes. Most importantly, its fur was as blue as ink. If this wasn't a British Shorthair, what else could it be? Meow meow. The little guy's voice was a little weak. After the little mouth opened, its pink little tongue licked involuntarily. Obviously, it was very, very hungry. Hey, what should I do? Murphy was a little anxious. She had milk powder in her office, but obviously milk couldn't be fed to such a small kitten. Kittens were lactose intolerant, and drinking milk would cause diarrhea. Murphy held the little kitten in one hand, and took out her phone from her bag with the other hand. She called Mo Shawan. Shawan, where are you? Downstairs? Great, don't come up first. Go to the pet shop and help me buy a bag of cat food for the kitten. Remember, it must be the kind that kittens eat. Yes, I picked up a kitten, and it's starving. What breed? Why are you still asking this at this time? Hurry up and buy it. It needs to be soaked until it's soft. The cat is starving. Murphy was a little anxious. However, while she was making the call, Mo Shawan had already arrived in the elevator. The signal was cut off and she appeared in front of Murphy. Sigh, you're really pissing me off. Murphy hugged the kitten in her arms and gently stroked the fine fur on the back of its head to calm it down. Look, it's starving to death. Hurry up and buy it for me. Mo Shawan smiled as she looked at the cat in Murphy's hands. She wasn't worried at all. She smiled and said, Sis, don't worry. I've seen your British Shorthair before. It belongs to Xiao AI from the planning department on the 3rd floor. Her big cat gave birth to a litter of kittens, and she brought them to us last month. Maybe it's the weekend and she has to work overtime, so she brought the kitten over to play. I saw Xiao AI this morning. Mo Shawan smiled and said, Sis, don't worry. Let's send it back to Xiao AI. Even if it's not Xiao AI's, Xiao AI must have cat food. However, when Murphy heard Mo Shawan say that the kitten might have a master, she wasn't very happy. Instead, she was a little disappointed. Then what are we waiting for? Let's hurry up and go. The kitten is starving. Murphy hugged the kitten and lowered her head to pet it. The British Shorthair was indeed Xiao AI's. She had forgotten to look after it because she had some work to do. Who knew that it would disappear when she looked up? She was anxiously looking for the kitten. Thank you, Sister Feifei. Thank you, Huan Huan. It actually ran to the 5th floor? It's getting more capable. Xiao AI's face was full of shock. After carrying the kitten, she put it in a small basket. There were a few British Shorthairs in the basket. They were all meowing and crying for food. Xiao AI quickly made cat food for the kittens. These kittens that were less than 2 months old could eat kitten food that was softened by boiling water, but they couldn't be fed milk. Mo Fei was playing with these kittens on the side reluctantly, especially the little British Shorthair she saved just now. That one looked the smallest, but it was quite brave. Not only did it not hide in fear like its brothers and sisters, but after the contact just now, it seemed to have a good impression of Murphy. It reached out its small paw and touched Murphy's hand. Murphy gently held it and squeezed it. This kind of kitten, the small meatball under its paw was soft and very comfortable to touch. Meow meow. The British Shorthair's tender voice almost melted Murphy's heart. It was a pity that this was someone else's cat. Eventually, Mo Fei could only return to his office reluctantly. He had to be careful when petting a cat. In the end, he could only return to his office reluctantly. Mo Shawan skillfully turned on her computer and was ready to start checking and replying to the emails about the new cooperation negotiations. But as soon as she entered the mailbox, she saw a familiar name. Ah. Mo Shawan excitedly ran to the recording studio and shouted to Murphy, Sister, come on, Muxiang sent an email. Mo Shawan was a little too excited, and Murphy scolded her. How old are you? How can you get married if you get so excited? Murphy was calm. The two returned to the office and looked at the email. Mu Xiang, as he had promised before, spent half a month preparing, and finally sent the 10 songs that he had prepared for Murphy. It's really 10 songs. Murphy said with admiration. Sister, this person is really amazing. He just took out 10 songs. Even Mo Fei felt that it was a bit strange. Although the 2 songs before were very good songs, after all, there were only 2 songs, so it was still understandable. But only half a month had passed, and Mu Xiang had taken out 10 songs in one go. Writing songs was not like making dumplings, where you just put the stuffing into the dumpling skin, and then it was done. Even if the 10 songs were not of high quality, ordinary people would not be able to come up with so much inspiration in such a short time. Right? Of course, Murphy was just shocked and confused. She still asked Mo Shawan to print out the music score and lyrics, so that she could think about it carefully. According to Murphy's habit, she would not listen to demos. She wondered if Yang Yi would vomit blood if he knew about this. He had spent a lot of effort on this. The 10 songs were printed out in a thick stack of paper. Murphy could not read so much at once, so Mo Shawan flipped through it with interest. "Sister, this song is a little interesting," Mo Shawan said with a smile. "Look, before you said that he was just an ordinary fan. Look at the lyrics. He has spoken out his heart." Murphy took it and looked at it doubtfully. She read the song title. "In My Voice?" Mo Shawan bumped her cousin's shoulder and joked. "It's not bad to have a fan who can write songs like this, right? He admires you from the bottom of his heart, so the songs he writes are full of affection." But Mo Xiaojuan's words made Murphy frown deeply. Chapter 120. Murphy did not know how to sing In My Voice, but from the lyrics, it was indeed a very artistic song. A song about encounters and love. The lyrics were very beautiful, so beautiful that even though Mo Xiaojuan's words had a knot in her heart, Murphy could not help but look at the music score. So mi li sua. Murphy tried to feel the melody of the song. Without any precaution, Mo Shawan looked at her cousin with some admiration. To her, who was only at the 5th rank in the battle, just looking at the music score made her dizzy. Murphy simply had the most magical skill in the world. "I didn't have any misgivings. You just appeared in my world." Murphy sang this opening a little hoarse, maybe because she had not grasped the right singing voice. However, with Mo Fei's voice, even if she sang it, it would not sound bad. Very quickly Murphy sang to the high notes. "You exist deep in my mind, in my dreams, in my heart, in my voice." These lyrics were like a confession. Murphy's brows furrowed deeper and deeper, feeling especially awkward. Indeed, when Yang Yi was choosing a song for Murphy, he thought of this original song by Chu Wanting in his previous life, and inexplicably felt that the mood created by the lyrics was very suitable for his and Murphy's story. Although it could not be considered a confession, Yang Yi added it as a coincidence, wanting to use a special way to tell Murphy his feelings. Without any precaution, you just appeared in my world, bringing me a pleasant surprise, unable to control myself. Wasn't this referring to the original part of the maple forest? Murphy barged into the original part of Yang Yi's world, and that part was a pleasant surprise, unable to control himself. And just like the song, "But you just had to be like this. Without me noticing, you quietly disappeared. There was no news from my world. All that was left were memories." In the past few years, Murphy suddenly disappeared without a trace, leaving only a vague memory in his mind. Later, when she reunited with Shishi, their worlds intersected again, but this time, it was Yang Yi's turn. Yang Yi's understanding of Murphy actually had a process of change. At first, it came from the original body's memory, which was full of fetters and misunderstandings. After that, every short contact, Yang Yi listened to each of her songs, and gradually, Yang Yi had a better understanding of Murphy. Your existence, deep in my mind. In the end, in my voice, Murphy, like her singing, gradually took root in Yang Yi's mind. The scenes in the past few months were like a roller coaster. The two of them quarreled and bickered, but in the end, it seemed that only sweetness was left. But we still felt each other's eyes, a heartbeat, an unexpected happiness, as if it was a dream, destined by fate. Yang Yi liked the last sentence more. The world is so big, why did we meet? Is it fate? Is it God's will? Maybe it was fate that made them have such deep fetters, or maybe it was the fetters that gave Yang Yi the opportunity to understand and like such a sincere woman who hid herself in indifference, but in fact had a passionate heart. It could be said that this was a song that Yang Yi used to express his feelings. It was not a confession, but it was better than a confession. However, Yang Yi forgot that he was using a Smurf account. The identity of the Smurf account was one of Murphy's fans, not him. From this song, the information that Murphy got was distorted. It was as if one of her fans, because of an unreal encounter, or because he bought one of her records in the music store, fell in love with her because of her singing, so he confessed to her affectionately. Mo Fei was still touched, but what Mo Fei felt was even more uncomfortable. That's not right. Murphy suddenly muttered to herself. Mo Shawan scratched the itch on her back in a daze, and said, What's wrong? Is it because you're there singing too high? Murphy shook her head. Her pretty face looked a little serious and said, I don't think I should use Mu Xiang's song. Why? Mo Shaoan asked in surprise. Is the song he wrote not good? The quality of this batch is bad? Murphy shook her head and said, No, it's not bad, but it's too good. She looked at a few songs just now, and almost all of them were good. The lyrics were like poems, each word was meaningful, and the emotions expressed were very delicate. The score was not bad, and there was no need to hum it out. Murphy's brain seemed to have a piano, and looking at the notes, the corresponding melody echoed in her mind. Although it was not sung together with the lyrics, the beautiful melody, coupled with the beautiful lyrics. How could such a song be bad? Or not to mention other things, Murphy felt that this song, In My Voice, was not worse than the first Dream, and Love Me Don't Go that Mu Xiang wrote for her. One must know that this kind of song, if used as the title song, no one would question it, but now it was all given to her? Murphy thought of the deep feelings that the other party expressed for her, and felt that it was hard to accept. But Mo Shaoan could not understand. She asked anxiously, Sis, why are you being silly? It's not easy to find a good songwriter to write a song for you. Why are you being so picky? I'm not being picky. Murphy frowned and said, It's him. How should I put it? I already have a child, and I can't give him what he wants. That's not right. Murphy was a little embarrassed, but Mo Shaoan still understood. She said generously, So what? There are many fans who are infatuated with you, and you can't be in a relationship with them. I know that you like that young guy in your heart now. Mo Shaoan looked at Murphy, who was hesitant to say something, but did not refute. She giggled and said, But so what? You can just treat that Mu Xiang as an ordinary admirer of yours, right? Isn't it normal for an outstanding woman like you to have a lot of admirers? In the worst-case scenario, you can accept their gifts but keep your distance from them, right? Mo Shaoan pulled Murphy's arm and persuaded her. Anyway, we're using Mu Xiang's songs, and it's not like we're not paying him. If you feel that you're mistreating him, then sign the best contract with him, and give him the best share of the profits, right? Sis, good songs are hard to come by. Mo Shaoan was like a little devil with a fork, persuading Murphy. However, after listening for a long time, Murphy shook her head firmly and said, No, I won't do that, I won't feel good about it. And if Yang Yi, or Shishi finds out, if Shishi finds out that her mom is such a person, she'll be disappointed. Mo Shaoan was a little disappointed. I am my sister, why are you so stubborn? Won't you tell them? If you don't tell them, they won't know. No, Murphy was still as stubborn as a bull. Chapter 121. Murphy was so stubborn. Once she decided on something, no one could change her mind. Mo Shaoan could only watch helplessly as Mo Fei sat in front of her computer, and then began to click on the email reply and type on the keyboard. Murphy told Mu Xiang in the email that although she was grateful for the song that Mu Xiang wrote for her, she was sorry that she couldn't accept it. Because I already have someone I like. She didn't want to give him the wrong impression and waste his time. Sis, you can't write like that. It's too straightforward. Mo Shaoan stopped Murphy from sending the email. Murphy looked at Mo Shaoan in confusion and asked, What's wrong? You can't tell him that you already have someone you like. Mo Shaoan said with a headache. What if he gets angry and leaks this email to the media? Murphy frowned. If it was the Murphy who had just debuted, she would definitely say, Impossible, how can a person be so despicable? But now Murphy still knew how sinister human nature could be. Then how do you think I should write it? Murphy gave up her position and left the professional matters to the professionals. Just say that it's because of personal reasons, so you can't blah blah blah. Mo Shaoan skillfully revised the email. Not only this sentence, but the entire email was revised by her. The wording was more appropriate, and the tone was more tactful. Of course, the meaning was still the same. Mo Shaoan finally looked at Murphy and asked, Sis, do you really want to send it? You have to think about it carefully. After you send it, you might have to say goodbye to these good songs. And your new album is also going to be ruined. Send it. Murphy was very firm and said without wavering. Okay, Mo Shawan clicked the send button. Seeing the email sent, Murphy breathed a sigh of relief. She felt that she had put down some of the things that she had been carrying. However, after returning to the sofa and sitting down, Murphy looked at the messy music scores on the coffee table. She collected them, folded them carefully, and put them in a folder. Perhaps she would use them to practice in the future, but these songs no longer belonged to her. Murphy's delicate eyes revealed a trace of sadness. You can't bear to? Mo Shawan went up and massaged her cousin's shoulders. She smiled and said, You were so determined just now. Murphy rolled her eyes at her and said snappily, What's there to be reluctant about? Am I the kind of person who can't let go? Hurry up and book me a ticket for the day after tomorrow. In the afternoon, Murphy had to go to Beijing to participate in a 2-day recording of a variety show. But according to Murphy's own plan, after this business trip, she would take half a month off to accompany her daughter. Although Neo Miling had become more and more snobbish in the past few years, she didn't have any intention of falling out with Murphy. She still very gently approved Murphy's long leave. One must know that some of the newcomers in the company, or the trainees in the practice room, didn't receive such good treatment at all. How could there be such a thing as a holiday? After Murphy lectured Mo Shawan, she felt relieved. She looked back at the computer that she had just sent the email on and thought to herself, Perhaps this is for the best. Don't think about taking shortcuts. If it's yours, it'll be yours. If it's not yours, Murphy, you can't take it. All of this, the initiator, Yang Yi, still didn't know. After he sent the email, he threw the computer aside. Just like how Changzi couldn't reach Yang Yi without calling, this guy would only log on to SNS or email when he needed it. When would Yang Yi see Murphy's email? This was still unknown. Now Yang Yi was playing with his daughter in the coffee shop. By the way, she, who wanted a weapon, went to the East Sea Dragon Palace. Do you know the sea? Yang Yi gestured. It's very big, very blue, and it's full of water. After listening to the story of Journey to the West yesterday, the little girl was fascinated by the monkey that jumped out of the stone. She pestered her father to continue the story of the monkey all day long. She even didn't want to watch her favorite cartoon. Anyway, there was nothing to do. It was close to noon, and there were no customers in the coffee shop. Yang Yi told his daughter another story. I've seen the sea. It's very big. She raised her small hand and said seriously, It's a long flight to go back to Grandma's house. Then there's the sea below, and Mom said there are big fish in it. Yes, Sun Wukong ran into the sea and asked the Dragon King for a weapon. Yang Yi said. She was very puzzled. She asked, Why can he go into the sea? Mom said the sea is terrible. She can't go into the sea to play. She can't go into the sea to play, because she hasn't learned how to swim yet, but Sun Wukong can. Yang Yi explained with a smile. Oh, he has to learn how to swim. She nodded as if she understood. After a while, Yang Yi finally talked about how Sun Wukong got the most precious treasure of the East Sea Dragon Palace, the sea stabilizing needle. It's a very big and thick stick, but Sun Wukong can make it smaller. It's about the same size as the stick in Dad's hand. Yang Yi said excitedly. He even dismantled the mop, leaving the handle in his hand. She ran over excitedly and asked her father to play with it. Of course, she could hold it with both hands, but she couldn't wave the long handle. After all, she was still too young. This Jingu Bang, it weighs 13,500 jin. Even if it's smaller, the weight hasn't changed. It's almost as heavy as 2 or 3 cars. Yang Yi said. But Sun Wukong is just right for me. He can dance with it in his hand. She was still thinking about how heavy 2 or 3 cars were at first, but soon, the little girl's attention was completely attracted by her father's performance. Yang Yi stood on his tiptoes and looked at the moon with the mop in his hand. Then he took a step back and hit the stick on the ground with his right hand. Then he hooked the stick with his heel in the air like a football, balancing it perfectly in the air. Then Yang Yi tiptoed and the stick bounced up in the air. He leaned sideways and held the middle part of the stick with his left hand. With just the movement of his fingers and wrist, the stick spun like a big windmill. Woo woo woo. The hollow stick created afterimages and whistled in the wind. Wow! She exclaimed. She watched without blinking her big eyes. Her two small hands were in the air, as if she also had a stick in her hand. She was unconsciously twisting it. Yang Yi, of course, had never learned the monkey show before. However, he had always been a hardcore fan of Lu Xiaotong, so he had watched many of his performance videos. With his skills, he naturally couldn't do it as vividly as Lu Xiaotong, but it was no problem for him to imitate a little and fool his daughter. That's it. Sun Wukong got his favorite weapon, and the Dragon King, Shrimp Soldiers, and Crab Generals of the East Sea Dragon Palace were very happy to send this troublemaker away. Yang Yi waved the Jingu Bang for a while, and then stopped to finish the story. But at this moment, the little girl had no time to listen to the story. Her eyes were full of little stars and she praised with admiration. Papa is so awesome. Chapter 122. Today Mr. Lu from the Sahara Publishing House came to Jiangqing to visit Yang Yi. However, his main purpose was to deliver the letters sent by the readers in the past half a month. There are still letters from readers? Yang Yi had read the book review section once before. He felt that there were a lot of trolls in it, so he never visited it again. If the readers had any opinions, they would at most get it from Changzi. Now that he saw this kind of traditional letter, he felt that it was quite novel and opened it to read. This is because there are still a considerable number of readers of physical books. They may be a little older, so they still prefer this ancient way of communication. Mr. Lu sat on the sofa in front of Yang Yi, his hands on his knees, a little reserved. Yang Yi still read very seriously. He also felt that such letters from readers were very intimate. Moreover, after opening a few letters, not only were there no trolls, but they were also very serious about their feelings after reading the book. Every word that was drawn with a stiff pen reflected their efforts. After reading a few letters, Yang Yi had the idea of replying to a few of the previous letters. Of course, he couldn't reply to all of them. Mr. Lu brought a sack of stamps. If Yang Yi was interested in collecting stamps, the stamps could be pasted on a few large booklets. In the middle, Yang Yi inadvertently looked up and saw Mr. Lu sitting on the sofa awkwardly and bored. She was looking at him curiously, and his neck was a little stiff. He couldn't help but laugh and said to Mr. Lu in Cantonese, "Lu Sheng, why are you so nervous? Relax, just treat this as your own home." In order to not make Mr. Lu so embarrassed, Yang Yi remembered another thing. He went back to the study, took out a stack of printed manuscripts, and handed it to Mr. Lu. "Since you are here, I'll have to trouble you, Lu Sheng, to help me see if this collection of fairy tales of mine is worth publishing." Yang Yi laughed. This stack of printed manuscripts was the fairy tales that Yang Yi had recently sorted out. They were all stories that he had told Shishi. There were dozens of them, big and small. Originally, Yang Yi had the idea of publishing these stories. Later, because Murphy wanted to read them, Yang Yi did not delay and took the time to organize them. Of course, Yang Yi didn't know how the fairy tale books were published in this world. In addition, many of the stories in this world were made up by him based on some framework. He didn't know if there would be any difference when compared to the original version. It just so happened that Mr. Lu was here. Let him give some advice. Mr. Lu was surprised. He looked at Yang Yi and asked, "Yang Yi, you know how to write fairy tales?" This was too miraculous. Not to mention the subject matter of Yang Yi's previous books, just looking at Yang Yi's figure and muscles, an 8-foot-tall man writing a fairy tale. It was probably as unrealistic as a fairy tale, right? Wasn't this the legendary embroidery of Zhang Fei? Yang Yi didn't mind. He smiled and said, "These stories are actually made up by me and told to my daughter. She quite liked it, but it was still a child after all. So I don't know if it's good or not. Mr. Lu, you have to read it to know." Shi, who was at the side, heard her father say that she was a child. She pouted unhappily. However, she didn't disturb her father. Her father was talking about work. Mr. Lu wasn't a manager specializing in children's literature, but he had been in this industry for a long time. Moreover, he had been working as an editor for a long time, so he still had a good eye. After more than half an hour, he had only read a few stories. However, sensing Yang Yi's eager and expectant eyes, Mr. Lu reluctantly put down the manuscript in his hand and smiled embarrassedly. These stories are indeed written by Yang Yi. I, a man in my 40s, can still be fascinated by them. Mr. Lu gave a very high evaluation and said, whether it's a single story or a whole, Yang Sheng's stories are more wonderful than those fairy tales in the current market. I'm not flattering you, because I'm also a father. Although my son has long passed the age of reading fairy tales, if he was still young, I would definitely be willing to buy such a book for him to read. It's just, Mr. Lu was a little hesitant. He said hesitantly, Sahara Publishing has no advantage in the field of children's literature. We have never published such a type of book. This was really an honest person. Mr. Lu wanted to persuade Yang Yi to find a more professional children's literature publishing house. Fortunately, Fu Jun was the boss. Otherwise, an honest manager like him would have been fired long ago. It's okay. Yang Yi waved his hand in satisfaction and said, Sahara Publishing it is. I'll send the manuscript to your email. As for the rest, you and the editor of the publishing house can decide. Of course, this stack of printed manuscripts couldn't be brought back to Mr. Lu. Yang Yi had printed them out for Murphy to read. After sending Mr. Lu off, Yang Yi welcomed a rare guest. Long time no see. You can finally show your face. Yang Yi smiled and teased him. Sigh, don't mention it. Since the interview with the TV station, I've been grounded by my dad. Guazi's face was a little rounder. It seemed that he had eaten a lot at home, but he had also grown a lot taller. His figure looked slimmer. A 16-year-old teenager was at the age where he was growing. Yang Yi knew that Guazi had been grounded at home. When he saw the little fatty's interview on TV, Yang Yi felt that this guy was a little too flamboyant. Sure enough, before Yang Yi could say anything, Guazi was beaten up by his father. Then he was grounded at home to reflect. Yang Yi didn't know the effect of his reflection. Anyway, Guazi, this chatterbox, couldn't use a mobile phone or a computer at home. He must be bored to death. Today the letter of acceptance arrived, so my dad allowed me to come out. Guazi said with some palpitations. The feeling of being grounded was really torture. It's good to be grounded. You're going to go to college, but you're still so unreliable. Yang Yi was used to being a stay-at-home dad, so he spoke in an educating tone. Okay, brother Yang, don't tease me, Guazi said gloomily. This time, I'm here to let you see my acceptance letter and to give our cutest little sister Shishi a birthday present. Ah, Shishi has a present? The little girl who was nestled in her father's arms suddenly became spirited and asked happily. Yes. Guazi looked at Yang Yi unhappily. You see, your dad is so hateful. He didn't even inform me of little sister Shishi's birthday. Otherwise, I would have an excuse to ask my dad to give me a day off. Ahem, no, it's to give little sister Shishi a present. Call her Shishi, Yang Yi seriously corrected. You're an uncle, not a brother. Hee. Uncle Gua. Shishi also followed her father and said with a giggle. Chapter 123. Since Shishi was pestering him for a present, Guazi had no choice but to put down the notice and take out the birthday present he had prepared for Shishi. Shishi had now become an expert at opening presents. Her swift movements allowed her to remove the wrapping paper and ribbon in a few moves. When she opened the box, a small cartoon pillow was revealed. The cartoon image on it was a cute little girl with blue eyes, blue hair, and a white wreath. She had small hands and feet and a big head. She looked very cute. When Shishi saw it, she shouted happily, "It's Rem!" Rem was the cartoon image of the world's most popular cartoon, Roswell. It was not that its plot was wonderful, but it used a cartoon style that had never appeared before, which made the whole animation style particularly cute. Yang Yi had seen a lot of such drawings in his previous life, so he was not interested in this cartoon. However, Shishi liked it very much. Hee, I knew Shishi would like it. Guazi laughed and said. I asked my sister, and she said that she likes this Rem the most now. You have a sister? Yang Yi asked in surprise. Yes. But my sister is already 12 years old. Guazi scratched his head and said embarrassedly. But the things that girls like should be similar. I bought the right gift. Yang Yi looked at his daughter's happy expression as she hugged the REM pillow and did not want to let go. He said to Guozi seriously, but she still likes the gift from her father the most. Guozi was a little confused. He scratched his head and said, okay. As long as you're happy. While she was playing with the pillow, Yang Yi looked at Guozi's admission notice. He raised his head in confusion and asked, Electronic media major? Do you like this major? Guozi shook his head. Then why did you sign up for this major? Yang Yi was even more puzzled. Guozi grinned and said, Big brother Yang, didn't I tell you before? The reason why I came back to Jiangqing Media University is because I want to attend the performing arts course. Then he could prove himself and prove that he wasn't like those examiners who looked down on him. That he couldn't be an actor just because he was fat and young. Guozi didn't say anything else. Both he and Yang Yi were well aware of it. It seemed that the confinement had some effect. Anyway, my results are good. Other than some majors that require art test results, I can choose any of them. So I chose this major with the highest admission score. Guozi said proudly. All right. Yang Yi thought that Guozi had a deeper meaning for choosing this major. Guozi patted his chubby thigh and seemed to remember something. He smiled and said, By the way, big brother Yang, let me tell you something fun. Oh. Yang Yi felt that this guy seemed to have been cooped up for too long, and was about to start chattering again. Didn't I get locked up at home by my dad, and can't go out to play? Guozi said excitedly, It was too boring. I could only look for books at home. Guess what I saw? Guozi didn't wait for Yang Yi to guess and said happily, I saw a book called Drawing Sword on my dad's bookshelf. The content was quite good, but guess what? Its author is also called Yang Yi. Guozi was convulsing with laughter. Let me tell you, my dad likes this book very much. So I said to my dad one day, Dad, I have a friend called Yang Yi. Do you want me to ask him to give you an autograph? Yang Yi continued to be speechless. I said, If Yang Yi gives you an autograph, Dad, will you not put me in confinement? Guozi told this to Yang Yi as a joke. As a result, my dad slapped me in the face. You don't do your job every day. You think about useless things and do meaningless things. You brat, you want to know a great author like Yang Yi? Haha, big brother Yang, don't you think it's a coincidence? There really is an author with the same name as you. Guozi wanted to get the same incredulous and funny response from Yang Yi. Yang Yi looked at him speechlessly. After a long silence, he reached out his hand and said, Give it to me. Give what? Guozi was puzzled. Give it to me for an autograph. Yang Yi said seriously. Little Fatty's head was full of question marks. After a while, he came to his senses and pointed at Yang Yi in surprise. Yang, big brother Yang, you're Yang Yi? She heard half of what he said this time. She ran over and said contemptuously, Funkelgua, you're so useless. You don't even know that my papa's name is Yang Yi. I know when I'm only 3 years old. You're 4 years old. Yang Yi reminded her with a smile. The depressed little fatty looked at Shi, who was acting like a little adult, and felt a little helpless. However, he still looked at Yang Yi in surprise. Big brother Yang, are you really the author who wrote Drawing Sword? Yang Yi smiled faintly and said, It's the real deal. Oh my god, I actually know a great author. Guozi held Yang Yi's hand excitedly and said, That's amazing. I thought it was just a coincidence. Yang Yi pushed him away in disgust. Get lost, get lost. If you want an autograph, give me the book. I haven't signed it for anyone yet. I don't want an autograph. Guozi said with a smile. If your drawing sword is made into a movie, can you give me a role? What role? I think I'm quite similar to Li Yunlong. Guozi laughed shamelessly. Get lost. How about Chu Yunfei? I think Chu Yunfei should be half as handsome as me. Get lost. What about Zhao Gang? He's a big supporting role. Get lost as far as your thoughts can go. Sister-in-law Xiuqin is also good. I can dress up as a woman, and then sacrifice myself heroically on the city wall. How can you say that? Go to hell. Yang Yi felt that he would never be able to face such a role in the future. Look at you, you're more like a traitor. A traitor is fine too. Do I have a lot of scenes? I can play a traitor who leads the way. A traitor who forces a good woman into prostitution. Oh right, I can also play a traitor who pretends to be nice but is actually an undercover traitor. I'm not shooting anymore. I don't care who shoots. Guazi did not stay for dinner this time. His time was very tight. When he left, he said with great ambition, Big Brother Yang, for the next half a month, I'm going to the Capital Film and Television Base to play a small role. Please wish me good luck. The little fatty was trying his best to carve out a bloody path on the path of an actor. Therefore, even if he was usually cheeky, he still had a clear plan. Yang Ming did not know how he convinced his family to let him go alone to the messy capital to compete with those Beijing drifters for small roles. However, Yang Yi still admired his drive, so he patted Guazi on the shoulder and smiled slightly. Come on, there's a way to succeed where there's a will. Big Brother Yang believes that you can succeed. If I succeed, can I get a lead role when I come back? Get lost? Chapter 124. In the evening, Yang Yi told his daughter the story of Journey to the West as usual. After coaxing the little girl to sleep, he returned to his study. Turning on the computer, Yang Yi needed to send the digital manuscript of the fairy tale collection to Mr. Liu. However, before sending it out, Yang Yi had to change the title of the book. It definitely couldn't be called a fairy tale collection. That name was too vulgar. What should I call it? Yang's Fairy Tales? Leon's Fairy Tales? Yang Yi temporarily looked for inspiration from the example of Grimm's fairy tales, but it seemed a little inappropriate. 1001 Nights. Yang Yi felt that the name was not good. It always reminded him of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. It had a strong desert fairy tale style. In the end, Yang Yi decided to change the title of the book to Shishi's Bedtime Stories. Then he left a sentence on the title page. This book is dedicated to my lovely daughter, Shishi, and thousands of children. I wish you all a sweet and fantasy dream like Shishi. Perfect. Yang Yi saved the document with satisfaction, and then sent it to Mr. Liu as an attachment. He also asked Mr. Liu to remind the editor of the typesetting review not to change the title of his book and the title page. I seem to have forgotten something. Yang Yi patted his head. Right, there were also illustrations. How could a qualified fairy tale book not have beautiful illustrations? Yang Yi didn't want other artists to draw the characters in the story for him, such as Elsa, Anna, and Snowbow and Frozen, or Snow White, dwarfs, and so on. If the design was bad, Shishi would be unhappy when she saw it in the future. When Yang Yi told Shishi stories, he used the little girl's sketches to draw the scenes and characters, so that Shishi could have a more intuitive impression of them. Of course, those drawings were still relatively simple pencil drawings. Yang Yi intended to organize these drawings and send them to Sahara Publishing House, asking them to help find a real artist to reproduce and enrich the illustrations into colorful illustrations. After making up his mind, Yang Yi added a few more sentences in the email, reminding him of these things. There's mail? Just as Yang Yi was about to close his email and quickly type out the remaining content of the remaining sins, he unexpectedly saw an email from Murphy. Yang Yi scratched his head and hurriedly opened it to take a look. He had actually been ignored by him for a few days. I'm sorry. I'm very grateful, but I'm still very sorry. I have to say thank you again. Yang Yi quickly read all the contents of the email in which Mo Fei refused to use his song. There was a strange expression on his face, and he himself didn't know how to express it. Do you think it's funny? This was inevitable. He had used a Smuff account just to design a passable identity, so that he could write songs for Murphy and help her out. In the end, he had been misunderstood. However, Yang Yi was also inexplicably moved. What a straightforward woman. Why did she reject him so seriously? She's so cute when she's serious. Although the email didn't directly state that it was changed by Mo Shawan, Yang Yi still felt that Murphy chose to reject him because of him. So he was also rejected because of him? This was truly. Yang Yi felt a headache from this logic, but now wasn't the time to worry about whether he should be jealous or not. It wasn't the time to worry about how to get rid of the strange feeling of being poached by him. The most important thing now was how to persuade Murphy not to let her imagination run wild, and let her accept the songs he gave her. Although Yang Yi took the risk of letting Murphy doubt him to open a Smurf account to write songs for Murphy, it was partly because of Shishi's request. However, the main reason was that Yang Yi wanted to help Murphy out of her predicament. He didn't want to see Murphy's disappointed expression after the failure of her comeback album. He also didn't want to see her forcing a smile for Shishi. He also didn't want Murphy to be questioned and used as an example by some people on TV. Murphy had an unparalleled voice and a wide range. She also had unremitting perseverance and fighting spirit. She belonged to the top stage, singing loudly under the cheers of tens of thousands of fans like Chen Yijie, instead of being tired on the road to various jobs for her dream. Even if Murphy wasn't Shishi's mother, Yang Yi also liked her songs and hoped to help her out of her predicament. Therefore, Yang Yi pondered for a while and replied to an email. The wording was as relaxed as possible to express an indifferent and open-minded attitude. Ahaha, Murphy, you misunderstood. I'm just a very ordinary fan of yours. I just want to write songs for you because I like your voice. Liking someone and loving someone are different. You may have heard Chen Yijie's long time not seeing, and better not seeing you. I wrote those songs for him, not because I love him. I like his voice. Among the male singers, I think Chen Yijie sings the best. Among the female singers, you are also the number one in my heart. Like some emotional venting in the lyrics, to tell you the truth, the person I want to express is not you, but another woman I love deeply. I'm sorry for the trouble these misunderstandings have caused you. But I still hope that these songs of mine can be sung by you, because your voice is the best, and only you can perform them to the best of your ability. Please do your best. I'm looking forward to your new album. In order to make it as easy as possible for Murphy to read, Yang even imitated the famous 1-1 accent from his previous life. He wrote until he was about to vomit. It was too awkward and really not suitable for a tall person like him. After he finished writing, Yang Yi carefully read it again. When he felt that there shouldn't be any problems, he sent it out. This time there shouldn't be any more misunderstandings, right? Yang Yi thought to himself. Yang Yi sent the email in the middle of the night, so Murphy naturally couldn't see it. And Mo Xiaowan also went on a business trip with Murphy. Although Mo Xiaowan would bring her laptop with her to do work, she wouldn't always open it to guard her email. The next day, Murphy still had to record for half a day. And Mo Xiaowan also followed the TV station the whole time, and didn't have time to open her laptop. Xiaowan, can you help me buy a few cups of coffee? I'll treat everyone. Murphy took the time to come out and said to Mo Xiaowan. The recording this time was considered quite high-end. The people participating in the recording were basically seniors in the industry. Murphy was considered the youngest junior, so naturally, she should take the initiative to treat everyone. And Mo Xiaowan hurriedly nodded. She quickly walked out of the TV station and went to the coffee shop across the building to buy coffee. There were dozens of cups, better to have more than one cup. Although the coffee shop staff would help deliver it later. Waiting for so many cups of coffee to be brewed and made would take some time. Thus, Mo Xiaowan was bored and walked to the bookstore next door to flip through some of the best-selling books on the shelves. Mo Xiaowan accidentally saw a familiar name, Yang Yi. She walked over and picked up a copy of Soldier Assault, and flipped through it. Mo Xiaowan didn't think it was a coincidence like Guizi. After all, she heard from Murphy that Yang Yi was writing a book. If I'm not wrong, this should be written by brother-in-law. Mo Xiaowan thought to herself. The change in Yang Yi when he came and changed Mo Xiaowan's opinion of him a little. Although she was still unforgiving and kept calling him Yang Yi, she had somewhat acknowledged him in her heart. This is our best-selling novel in the market now. A young male shop assistant came over and introduced it to Mo Xiaowan attentively. The author also has another book called Drawing Sword. It's also very popular. Look, there's no more on the shelves. It's almost out of stock every day. It's that good? Mo Xiaowan asked with some surprise. Of course. But miss, if you want to buy it, you can leave your contact information. We'll be sure to inform you when we get the stock tomorrow. I promise to keep one for you. The male shop assistant looked expectantly at Mo Xiaowan's beautiful face and said. Hee, There's no need to leave your contact information. If I want it, I think I can ask my relatives for it. Mo Xiaowan smiled charmingly at him and patted the mail shop assistant on the shoulder. Oh him. He definitely has connections to help me get it. After leaving the mail shop assistant, whose bones were melted by her smile, Mo Xiaowan returned to the coffee shop thoughtfully. With 2 best-selling books, brother-in-law should be very rich, right? Mo Xiaojuan's eyes turned and an idea came to her. Chapter 125. Mo Fei didn't see the email until she returned to Jiang City. Of course it was Mo Xiaowan, who was so excited that she was dancing with joy, who showed it to her. The misunderstanding has been cleared up. Sis, you can use these songs without worry. Mo Xiaowan said happily. Mu Ziang is a pretty good person. He's talented and knows how to be romantic. He wrote such nice songs for the person he likes. It's a pity that he already has someone he likes. As Mo Xiaowan spoke, she started to feel sorry for herself. It was as if Mu Ziang didn't express that he had someone he loved deeply, she would chase after him instead. However, Mo Fei was not as happy as expected. She looked at the content of the reply letter and frowned slightly. She seemed to be a little sleepy. It was a good thing that the misunderstanding was cleared up, but for some reason, Murphy felt that something was wrong. The reply gave her a strange feeling, but she couldn't tell what it was. Maybe I'm thinking too much? Murphy's face was cold, but her heart wasn't calm. Mo Xiaowan poked Murphy and asked excitedly, Sis, can we tell Sister Ling now? Now that we have 12 songs, we can let Sister Ling arrange a new album. Mo Xiaowan had long been unhappy with those people's snobbish attitudes. Now that she was rubbing her hands together, it was like slapping their faces. Humph, didn't you look down on us? Didn't you laugh at us for not being able to get 12 songs by ourselves? Didn't you think we would come back crying and begging you for help? Look, we don't need you and we can do it well. Mo Xiaojuan's heart was filled with the scene of everyone looking at her in shock and admiration. However, Murphy wasn't as excited as she was and said lightly, No need for now. Ha! Mo Xiaowan still hadn't recovered. I've already asked Sister Ling for 2 weeks of leave. The main thing during this time is to find a suitable kindergarten for Shishi. Murphy felt very tired. She waved her hand and explained softly, So about the album, let's put it aside for now. We'll talk about it when I come back. Okay. Mo Xiaowan pouted and said reluctantly. Murphy was coming. Yang Yi got the latest news from Shishi. The little girl received a call from her mother and talked for a long time. Mom said that she's coming to live with Papa and Shishi. Shishi excitedly jumped around her father. Her long and slender legs made people worry that they would break. Really? Yang Yi took out a few fresh fruits that he had bought in the morning from the fridge and prepared to make some fruit salad. Cece was a little picky now. She didn't want to eat simple fruits. She only liked mixed and colorful fruits. Really? And I know why Mom is coming. Shishi puffed out her chest, raised her head and said to her father. That longing look in her eyes seemed to say, Do you want to know? If you want to know, ask Shishi. Oh, why is that? Yang Yi asked with a smile. Of course he knew why Murphy came. Murphy had already told him. But since Shishi wanted to express so much, Yang Yi also went with the flow to satisfy the little guy. However, Shishi seemed to have thought of something. She hesitated for a moment and said, Ugh, no, I can't tell Papa. I can't say this. All of a sudden, Yang Yi, who had only wanted to tease her daughter, was depressed. Ah, you can't say it? Yang Yi asked in surprise. However, Shishi covered her mouth and ran away again, as if she was afraid of her father's questioning. Yang Yi was left in the same place, baffled and confused. He didn't know that Shishi's so-called know why was just her own imagination. The little guy made a wish on her birthday. She hoped that her parents could stay with Shishi forever. Now her mother really said that she would move here. Shishi didn't know that Murphy would only stay here for a few days. The little guy was so happy, thinking that her wish had come true. Just when Shishi wanted to tell her father proudly, her mother's words came to her mind. Wishes don't come true if they are said out loud. She didn't want to say it again. The naive little girl really hoped that this wish could come true all the time. But Yang Yi couldn't think of Shishi's way of thinking even if he was reborn 100 times. After Murphy finished packing her things, Mo Shawan brought it over. She looked a little tired and didn't look well. Yang Yi took the luggage from her when he saw her. Surname. Ahem, brother-in-law, my sister is in your care. Mo Shawan finally changed the way she addressed Yang Yi. Murphy still felt a little uncomfortable when she heard Mo Shawan address Yang Yi this way. She glared at Mo Shawan, but she was a little dizzy and didn't have the energy to speak. Mo Shawan stuck out her tongue and drove away. Let's go up, Yang Yi said softly, reminding Murphy, who was a little absent-minded. Murphy said, and followed Yang Yi silently. Why was she so cold today? Yang Yi felt a little uncomfortable, as if they were back to the time when they were incompatible like fire and water. However, Yang Yi was never a proactive person. When Murphy was silent, he didn't ask her. Just like when she didn't want to talk about it before, Yang Yi didn't ask. Because of Murphy's arrival, Yang Yi also carefully prepared dinner for tonight. Of course, it wasn't Western food. He knew that Murphy often went to Western restaurants to eat. Those Western dishes were all the same. She would get tired of eating too many of them. So he tried his best to cook Chinese food at home. He made delicious and beautiful Chinese food. This is winter melon and shrimp soup. The shrimps are fresh, peeled, and marinated with lemon juice and a little ginger. Before putting it into the pot, the egg white is kneaded. This can ensure the freshness and taste of the shrimps. In addition to winter melon, there are also wolfberries in the soup. Drinking it not only has the effect of reducing internal heat, but also can nourish the blood and beautify the skin. Yang Yi explained while serving soup for them. I like shrimps. She raised her small chopsticks and said, Papa, give me more shrimps. No winter melon. Mom, this is for you. Murphy didn't drink it and took the initiative to give it to her daughter. There are many more. Try it. Yang Yi smiled and scooped up shrimps for them. Today's main dish was more sumptuous. There was a 3-sauce stew mixed with chicken wings, ribs, potatoes, and many other ingredients to make a thick sauce. There was also Shishi's favorite sweet and sour pineapple sweet and sour pork, and there was also a light seaweed tofu pot. In addition, Yang Yi also prepared an after-dinner dessert, papaya and longan stewed with tremella. However, although Shishi ate very happily and her belly was round after a while, Murphy didn't seem to have a good appetite. She didn't even want to eat the heavy 3-sauce stew. She just ate a few mouthfuls of rice with the light seaweed and tofu. What's wrong? Is it not to your taste? Yang Yi finally couldn't help but ask. Murphy shook her head and said in a low voice, No, I just feel that my appetite is not very good. I'm sorry. What's wrong? Yang Yi frowned. He found a problem. Compared with when they just arrived home, Murphy's face became much rosier. Chapter 126. Murphy's face was a little red. Yang Yi had thought that it was because she was hot and had asked Murphy about it, but Murphy had told him not to lower the temperature. I'm a little cold. At that time, Murphy's words were still echoing in Yang Yi's ears. Now Yang Yi, who felt that something was wrong, could see more clearly. This wasn't a normal red. It wasn't a problem with the lighting. It was a kind of flush, similar to the red of the plateau. It was also a little like the blush on the face of someone who couldn't really drink alcohol. It was caused by the expansion of the capillaries. What's wrong? Yang Yi's sudden gaze made Murphy feel a little uncomfortable. However, she was dizzy and didn't have the energy to think about it. Suddenly, Yang Yi stood up. His arm stretched out directly across the table and pressed it on Murphy's forehead. Murphy was suddenly stunned. It was as if she had been suddenly pressed against the wall. She stared blankly at Yang Yi, who was looking at her with concern. Shishi, who was next to them, also opened her eyes wide to watch the commotion. However, her 2 small hands were grabbing the chicken wings and eating hard. Her mouth didn't stop moving. Yang Yi's expression was very serious. He felt the temperature of Murphy's forehead. It was boiling hot. Obviously, there was a problem. He couldn't help but scold. Why is it so hot? Hot? Murphy asked in a daze. Yang Yi put down the chopsticks in his left hand, walked around the table, and gently held Murphy's head. Then he touched her forehead to confirm. He asked reproachfully, "It's very hot. Why didn't you tell me that you had a fever?" Murphy's head was really dizzy. When she was held by Yang Yi, she couldn't even raise the thought of struggling. Instead, she seemed to have found support in Yang Yi's arms. Her head was even dizzier. Fever? Really? After returning from Beijing today, Murphy felt a little tired. She thought it was because she had been too tired for the past few days. Even when she told Mo Xiaowan, she asked Mo Xiaowan if she had eye bags. It seemed like she hadn't had a good rest. Mo Xiaowan comforted her with a smile. "Sister, your face is still rosy. This was the color of health, the taste of happiness. Hurry up, go to my brother-in-law's place and let him nourish you again." At that time, Murphy still had the strength to chase after Mo Xiaowan, who did not know how to choose her words carefully. However, she did not know that her tiredness was not because she was tired or sleepy. "He really has a fever. Sai, what should I say about you? He's already so old. Yet he doesn't even know that he has a fever." Yang Yi looked at Murphy's listless appearance and was very anxious. He suddenly bent down and carried Murphy. "Don't faint." Murphy wanted to feel wronged and retort, but she suddenly felt as if she was riding on clouds. She was shocked. She subconsciously reached out her two thin arms and tightly hugged Yang Yi's neck, afraid that she would fall. Yang Yi only carried her to the sofa. Then he turned around and took out the medical box that he had hidden at home. He took out the mercury thermometer, shook it, and put it on Murphy. "Wait a moment and see what's the temperature." Yang Yi sat on the sofa next to her and said unhappily, "If you feel uncomfortable, you should have said so earlier. When I touched it just now, it was so hot that you could boil an egg." "Don't scold me." Murphy covered her eyes and said sadly. Her voice was weak and her lips were pale without any color. "What's wrong with Mom?" Shishi's mouth was full of oil and her hands were dirty. She climbed down from the chair and ran over to ask. "Mom is sick. She must have a fever." Yang Yi's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. He grabbed Shishi's little hands that were still stained with sauce and put her on the sofa. Yang Yi carried his daughter to the bathroom to wash her hands and wipe her face. "Are you full?" "I'm full." Shishi pointed to her bulging belly and said with a smile, "Papa, look. My belly is so big." Yang Yi didn't care too much. If Murphy saw this, she would definitely say that the little girl was not reserved. "Papa, Papa." When they were about to go out, Shishi took her father's hand and put it on her forehead. She shouted, "Papa, see if Shishi is sick." It turned out that she had just seen her father use his hand to check the temperature of her mother's forehead. She thought there was some magical detection method in it. Yang Yi rubbed the little girl's air bangs and said, "Well, you're not sick. Go and play. Dad has to take care of Mom." Shishi nodded obediently, but she didn't play by herself. She just held her big bear cub and looked at her mother and father. 38. 8 degrees. It's almost 39 degrees. Yang Yi frowned. "That's good." Murphy tried to smile and said to Shishi, who was looking at her with concern, "It's not serious. I'll be fine after a sleep." "How can that be? How long have you had a fever? If you don't lower the temperature, you'll only get hotter later." Yang Yi shook his head and said, "No, I have to take you to the hospital." "No, I don't want to go to the hospital." Murphy reacted strongly. "I'll put on makeup for you. No one will recognize you." Yang Yi thought that Murphy was worried about her identity being exposed. "No, I don't want to go to the hospital." Murphy curled up on the sofa like a little girl and said sadly, "It's only 38 degrees. I don't want to go to the hospital. If I go, I'll have to take an injection." Yang Yi understood that she was afraid of injections. Just when Yang Yi felt angry and funny, Shishi ran over. She struggled to hold the big bear cub and said very considerately, "Mom, Shishi will give you the big bear cub, okay? As long as you hold the big bear cub, you'll be fine soon." Murphy rubbed her daughter's little face with relief, but Yang Yi still asked Shishi to take the big bear cub away. Shishi, your mother is sick now. She needs a quiet and ventilated environment. The big bear cub is too big, and it'll be very hot to hold. Since Murphy didn't want to go to the hospital, Yang Yi had to think of other ways. Yang Yi was an expert when it came to bandaging or simply dealing with external injuries. In his medical kit, there were a lot of backup bandages and medicine. Although these were unlikely to be used, Yang Yi still prepared medical equipment and sufficient medicine for himself to take out the bullet and bandage the wound after he was shot, just in case. But Yang Yi was not very good at treating fever, this minor illness, and there was no ordinary fever medicine at home. There was a special medicine that could forcibly lower one's temperature, but it would cause a lot of damage to the body, so of course he could not give it to Mo Fei. So Yang Yi had to go out to buy medicine. And he didn't even clean up the messy tableware on the table. This was something that he couldn't tolerate in the past. When Yang Yi came back with the fever medicine, Murphy had fallen asleep on the sofa. Yang Yi woke her up and coaxed her to drink the medicine. After drinking it, have a good sleep. Don't worry, you'll be fine tomorrow. Murphy was a little confused. She only felt that she was leaning in Yang Yi's arms. After drinking the medicine, she was carried by Yang Yi to the guest room where he slept. Finally, in the warm bed, Murphy fell asleep. Chapter 127. The next day, although the window was facing the west and the sun couldn't be seen, the cheerful chirping of birds outside the window was already announcing the beginning of a new day. On the big bed in the second bedroom, a sleeping beauty was curled up on her side. Her long hair was quietly spread out on the pillow, and her soft lips were slightly pursed, as if she was waiting for her prince to kiss her awake. Murphy's eyelashes were very long, and Shishi's eyelashes were very similar to her mother's. She had inherited many of Murphy's good looks, but Shishi's big eyes were inherited from her father. They were very cute. The chirping of the birds outside the window was too noisy. Murphy's eyelashes trembled, and she slowly opened her eyes. After a night of rest, Murphy's fever had subsided. Although her body was still a little weak, her spirit was much better than yesterday. After rubbing her eyes in a daze, Murphy began to come back to her senses, and memories came flooding back like a tide. Yesterday he carried me here? Murphy recalled the scene last night, and she felt her face become a little hot. She was really blushing this time. She hurriedly lifted the quilt and looked inside. Her clothes were still neat, but they were a little wrinkled after sleeping for a night. Last night, when Yang Yi carried her back, he didn't offend the beauty at all. He didn't take the initiative to change her clothes. This discovery made Murphy's good impression of Yang Yi rise a lot. She was actually very traditional, and Yang Yi's gentlemanly behavior was something she could accept. It made her feel very comfortable and warm in her heart. Ouch! Murphy turned over and sat up from the quilt. After sleeping for more than 10 hours, although her head was awake, her body was sore. She sat up and stretched her body. Murphy's figure was very good. The thin shirt couldn't cover the ups and downs of her breasts. The stretch of her body was very big. Not only did the bones in her body crack, but the shirt that was pushed up high also couldn't support the top button. Murphy quickly fastened the buttons back with a red face. Fortunately, there was no one else in the room. Just as she thought of this, Murphy suddenly noticed that there was a chair beside the bed. On it was a neatly folded towel. At the head of the bed, there was a basin of water and a towel hanging on the edge of the basin. He spent the whole night with me? Murphy was stunned. Yang Yi had indeed spent the night with Murphy. After drinking the medicine, Murphy's fever didn't go down quickly, and her forehead was burning up. Yang Yi poured a basin of cold water and used a cold towel to cool down Murphy's forehead. He had to change the towel every once in a while. This took a long time. Later on, although Murphy's condition stabilized, Yang Yi was not confident. He was worried that it would relapse, so he moved a chair and sat beside Murphy's bed to watch over her for the whole night. Of course, Murphy didn't know all the details, but looking at all these, she could roughly guess. She pursed her lips. Although she wasn't good at expressing her emotions, Murphy could clearly feel that her heart was really stirred by these scenes. After getting off the bed, Murphy tidied up her messy hair, and tidied her clothes before pushing open the bedroom door. Just then, she saw Yang Yi wearing an apron and setting the dining table. Yang Yi didn't go for his morning exercise. He woke up early and tidied up the housework that he didn't have time to do last night. Then he prepared breakfast in the kitchen. Murphy didn't eat much last night before going to bed. She must be very hungry this morning. Good morning. Murphy and Yang Yi's eyes met, and she lowered her head shyly. She had just woken up, her face hadn't been washed, her hair was messy, and she was still wearing yesterday's clothes. She must be in a mess, right? Murphy suddenly cared about these things. Good morning. Yang Yi put down the bowl in his hand and gently smiled. Do you feel better now? Yes, I feel better, Murphy said softly. However, this feeling was still a little strange. Murphy was still not used to speaking softly like a kitten in front of Yang Yi. Thinking that she hadn't washed up, she quickly waved her hand and went back to the master bedroom. Murphy was actually a clean person. After taking a bath and changing her clothes, she came out of the master bedroom. At this time, she had already smelled the fragrance of breakfast. She got up from the bed and ran to her father's side to ask for food. Mom. When she saw Murphy come out, she dropped the small spoon in her hand, jumped down from the chair, and happily ran to her mother's side to ask for a hug. Have you washed up? Murphy asked softly. If you don't brush your teeth in the morning, you can't eat. Yes, Papa also helped me wipe my face. She had a lot to say to her mother, so she hurriedly answered and then began to chatter. Mom, you don't know. She was so worried about you yesterday. The little girl's grammar was slightly wrong. After all, she was still young. Mom was very happy. How was she worried about Mom? Murphy asked softly. At this time, Yang Yi smiled and handed over a cup of warm water. He signaled with his eyes that he wouldn't interrupt the conversation between the mother and daughter. Murphy got up early in the morning and was busy tidying up her personal image. She didn't have time to drink water, but she was really thirsty. She took a few sips. The warm water immediately moistened her dry throat. It was very comfortable. She said very seriously. She was worried about Mom yesterday. I didn't watch cartoons, and I didn't ask Papa to tell me stories. I took care of Mom with Papa. Fortunately, Mom didn't have a fever. She was really afraid that Mom would get sick. She was really obedient last night. Later, she fell asleep by herself. She was very brave. Yang Yi also praised his daughter with a smile. She heard her father's praise and happily puffed out her small chest, as if to say, yes, such a good child is me. Mom is very touched. Thank you, she, who loves Mom so much. Murphy smiled and kissed her daughter's pink face. After Murphy recovered, she had been moved by Yang Yi's care. Now, she was in a good mood because of the caring care of her little baby. After Murphy recovered, she officially moved into Yang Yi's house. However, in her words, they weren't living together, but she had brought Shishi over for a vacation. Well, Yang Yi didn't care about this. However, with one more woman in the house, life became more colorful. Originally, Yang Yi's life was, when his daughter wasn't around, he would listen to music and wipe the coffee cup in the coffee shop alone for the whole day. When his daughter was around, Yang Yi listened to his daughter's chatter, answered her endless questions, and told her stories. The day passed by peacefully. Now with Murphy, Yang Yi's daily life seemed to be different. For example, Murphy cared more about the decoration of the house, and she always felt that Yang Yi didn't know how to live. How can there be no flowers at home? Looking around, there are only monotonous and boring colors. You have to get some flowers and put them in a bottle to add some color to your life, Murphy said seriously. Chapter 128. Murphy wasn't a hard-working and virtuous woman. Just by looking at the nanny in her house, it was obvious that she didn't know how to tidy up the room. When Murphy woke up in the morning, Yang Yi returned to the second bedroom and saw that although she had folded the quilt, it was almost the same as if she hadn't folded it. Either there was a small tail here and there, or there was a dent in the edges and corners. So Yang Yi folded the quilt again and pulled the sheets. However, in terms of quality of life, Murphy was more meticulous than Yang Yi. After all, She was a woman. Yang Yi scratched his head and said, "There are quite a lot of flowers in the garden downstairs. Do you want me to go and pick a few?" "Those are wildflowers. Compared to the artificially cultivated flowers in the flower shop, whether it's the variety, color, or size, there is a big difference." Murphy was speechless. "Since you want to arrange flowers, how can you just make do with it?" "You go and buy it, I'll do it." Murphy waved her hand coolly and ordered. All right, of course, Yang Yi had to go and buy it. Murphy's face was still easy to recognize. But where could he buy it? Yang Yi walked out of the door, and then remembered that he hadn't bought any flowers. But he thought of a flower shop. Yen Xiaopei said that she opened a flower shop at the East Gate. He was magnanimous and didn't have any grudges. He didn't care and went straight to the East Gate and found the flower shop. "Hey, Yang Yi?" As soon as Yang Yi walked through the door, Yen Xiaopei recognized him. After all, there weren't many men who could ignore her beauty all these years. Seeing Yang Yi, Yen Xiaopei's heart still had some ripples. It wasn't that she still couldn't forget Yang Yi, but if she didn't get it, she would always feel reluctant. But after all, he was an adult and there were students working part-time in the shop. Yen Xiaopei smiled and greeted him normally. "Hello." Yang Yi smiled and nodded at her before saying, "Miss Yen, I'd like to buy some flowers." So he came to buy flowers. And Yen Xiaopei knew that Yang Yi definitely didn't buy them for her. Yen Xiaopei remembered the more beautiful woman that Yang Yi's daughter had mentioned. "What kind of flowers do you want to buy? We have roses here, Chinese roses, lilies." Although Yen Xiaopei felt a little sour in her heart, she still said it as if nothing had happened. Yang Yi scratched his head. He really didn't know what to buy. He had an idea and said, "Why don't you pick a few of each for me? Pick the prettier ones." Not to mention the other girls in the shop, even Yen Xiaopei was stunned. Who would buy flowers like this? "Do you really want to buy it like this? If I pick them all, I'm afraid there will be dozens of them." Yen Xiaopei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Dozens of flowers were not considered a lot. Those rich people who spent money to buy beautiful girls' flowers would buy dozens, or even hundreds of flowers. However, Yen Xiaopei had been running a flower shop for a few years, and she had never seen anyone buy dozens of flowers of a variety. "It's okay. I'll buy it like this," Yang Yi said with certainty. "Xiao Luo." Yen Xiaopei helplessly called a part-time girl and said to her, "Help Mr. Yang pick the flowers. He's my friend. Pick the best ones for him." While Yang Yi was picking flowers, an elegantly dressed man walked in with a bouquet of bright red roses in his hand. Yes, he came to the flower shop with flowers. "Xiaopei, are you free tonight? I want to invite you to Binhai for dinner, and then go for a ride." The man affectionately handed the flowers to Yen Xiaopei. Naturally, Yen Xiaopei's pursuer wasn't the only one who talked to her like this. In order to get rid of her disappointment, Yen Xiaopei also accepted his pursuit. The man's temperament fascinated Yen Xiaopei. Although there was a big difference between him and Yang Yi, it seemed that this man was better. In addition to Xiao Luo, who was accompanying Yang Yi, there were two part-time girls who snickered and whispered on the side. "Tonight? Let me see." Yen Xiaopei couldn't help but raise her voice slightly and said in a reserved manner, "I'll send Inkai to my mom's place. I'm still free." After that, she glanced at Yang Yi. However, the latter didn't react at all. He was still excitedly asking Xiao Luo the name of the flowers. Yen Xiaopei had an indescribable disappointment in her heart, but she also secretly smiled bitterly. "Forget it. It's your own unrequited love." However, Yen Xiaopei's small eyes were still seen by the man. Following Yen Xiaopei's gaze, Yang Yi's tall figure made him faintly vigilant. "This is..." The man couldn't help but ask. Yen Xiaopei held the roses in one hand and held his arm with the other hand. She smiled and said, "This is a friend of mine. He happened to be here to buy flowers today." Yang Yi noticed the hostility in the man's eyes and raised his head in surprise. "Yang Yi, let me introduce you." Yen Xiaopei realized that the man's mood was a bit strange. It seemed that she had gone a bit overboard. She took the initiative to explain and introduce. "This is Yang Yi. He is also a friend of mine who owns a shop near the school. His daughter and my son are good friends." This is my boyfriend Yu Qingqing. He runs a training organization. After hearing that Yang Yi had a daughter, Yu Qingqing's expression eased a lot. Instead, he warmly shook hands with Yang Yi and said, "A small training organization relies on the mountain and the water on the river. We rely on Jiangchuan, so we can only train the candidates in this aspect." Oh, that's good. Yang Yi was quite helpless. He didn't want to know the other person. But to give Yan Xiaopei face, he still reached out his hand and shook hands. Mr. Yang also owns a shop at the East Gate? Yu Qingqing's hostility had subsided, but his enthusiasm didn't. Perhaps it was because he had been in the training industry for a long time. His mood was very high. He took the initiative to ask. He owns a coffee shop at the back gate, which is at the north gate. Yan Xiaopei helped Yang Yi to say, "North gate? That's a bit far. Otherwise, I can find a few friends to go there often." However, Yu Qingqing still enthusiastically said, "But that's okay. I'll go back and talk to my employees and let them help you promote." "Okay, thank you." Yang Yi helplessly nodded to the other person gratefully. Besides pretending to be grateful, what else could he do? Yan Xiaopei smiled at Yang Yi and pulled Yu Qingqing and said, "Okay, let my employees take care of Yang Yi. Didn't you want to eat with me? Can you send me home first?" "Of course, no problem," Yu Qingqing said politely. Before leaving, Yu Qingqing nodded to Yang Yi and made a gesture to talk later. Yang Yi didn't want to see this person again. This person looked elegant, but he was actually such a talkative person. It was okay that he could talk, but Yang Yi felt that Yu Qingqing was a bit fake. He was obviously full of hostility just now, but after turning his head, he seemed to have forgotten everything. Of course, this couldn't be criticized. A mature man should be a bit shrewd. This was a reflection of his charm. It was very compatible with Yan Xiaopei. Yan Xiaopei needed a mature and generous man to accept her past. A young and jealous boy couldn't control her. But Yang Yi didn't like Yu Qingqing. Compared to him, the talkative but sincere little fatty was much cuter. But it didn't matter. He was just a passerby. After Yang Yi bought the flowers, he happily went home. P.S. Regarding this chapter, Xiaohan didn't write a face-slapping plot, nor was it a trap. After all, Yu Qingqing didn't show off too much, and Yang Yi didn't have a conflict with him. They were all adults, so how could there be so many quarrels? He wrote a little more about Yan Xiaopei mainly to fulfill the wish of a book friend. He hoped that Yan Xiaopei could have a good ending. Xiaohan felt that this was a more open ending for Yan Xiaopei. Of course, Yu Qingqing wasn't Yan Xiaopei's future. But writing the character of Yu Qingqing meant that Yan Xiaopei had moved on. As a mature woman, she wasn't infatuated with a man to the point that she couldn't let go. The reality was the same. Yang Yi just had a good figure and was a bit more considerate, but 2 days of contact wasn't enough to make others fall head over heels in love with him. We don't know what Yan Xiaopei's future will be, but she is still working hard to pursue her love, so there is reason to believe that she will meet the right person, right? You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.